Here we go. We can do this. Are you ready? Good afternoon. The hour is 3:04. It is Monday, December 6th, and I hereby call to order the Personnel and Government Affairs Committee of the Memphis City Council. Ms. Owen, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Canali, Councilman Covette, Councilwoman Easter Thomas, Councilman Ford, Councilman Johnson, Councilwoman Johnson, Councilman Jones,
Here.
Councilwoman Logan,
Present.
Councilman Morgan,
Here.
Councilwoman Robinson,
Present.
Councilman Smiley,
I'm here.
Councilwoman Swearingen, Councilman Warren,
Present.
Chair Carlo.
Present, the chair observes a quorum. Colleagues, we have 4 items on today's agenda. Item number 2 will be held due to scheduling issues, and there will be an item that will be added at the heel of the meeting, and we will discuss that here shortly, but it's going to be an additional appointment should the body be willing to hear it. Colleagues, we're going to take item number 4, presentation regarding, back up, item number 3, a discussion with the City of Memphis 2022 legislative agenda. The mayor of Memphis is here to present the administration's agenda. Your Honor, thank you for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also, if when the time is right, I'd like to present the appointment on number 1 to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. With respect to the administration's legislative agenda, we've passed you out a document that gives kind of an overview of that agenda. My number 1 priority is the same number 1 priority has been for about 3 or 4 years, and that's more reoccurring money, or as we call it, operating money. The state calls it recurring money. And in the form of a higher percent of the sales tax. As you know, the state is running, I've heard potentially a $2 billion surplus for 1 year. I know, wow. We have asked for the last several years, we meaning all cities in the state, to remedy a situation that occurred in the early 2000s when Governor Bredesen was governor and the state had real financial challenges. So what they did was on big purchases, a car, a boat or so, it used to be you only paid the sales tax on the first 1,600 of the purchase. When they were having problems, they said, okay, we'll charge the sales tax on the second 1,600 for a total of 3,200. But on that second 1,600, they collect 100% of the sales tax, even our portion. So they're collecting for a car sold in Memphis 9.75% sales tax, and they're taking the entire 9.75%. That's one item. Second item is, and I'm about to give you approximate numbers, so please forgive me, but I have a write-up on the right side of your folder that gives more details. At the time, the state sales tax was about 5%. We cities get a very small portion of that sales tax, in addition to our 2.75. When they increased the state sales tax from approximately 5% to approximately 7%, they didn't give us any portion of that extra 2%. So we as cities come back and say, we'd like that remedied. That would benefit us to the tune of almost $13 million. The third sheet on that page shows you that amount. As you'll recall, they took away our money in the form of the hall income tax. That was $15 million out of our operating budget. Now, they did give us back some in the gas tax bill, in the Improve Act, about $7 to $7.5 million. So we're still down $7.5 million. So our ask is to approve both of those measures. I'm very open, because I have nothing in hand right now, to a phase-in, over X number of years, anything to get our foot in the door. It is my opinion that one of maybe our biggest challenge in city government and operating is just the limit by which our operating budget grows. It doesn't grow by very much. I always say our operating budget grows by approximately $10 million a year. A 1% pay raise for every city employee is $4.5 million. Pension goes up, healthcare goes up, boom, we're already done with the money. So that's my number one ask. Then we also hear that they could have up to $2 billion in one-time money. And that's the second ask under funding requests you see there. We have 4 items. All the number 2, 3, and 4 you're, I think, familiar with. You've seen presentations, you've funded things on that. The first one you're not. And that is, I don't think I've talked to y'all about, and you may know this, cruising up and down the Mississippi River is a growing industry. It surprises me. I'm happy about it, but it does surprise me. People are willing to pay $5,000 a piece to go in a cruise ship and cruise up and down the Mississippi. Memphis is their second favorite stop behind New Orleans. The dock that some people thought was a waste of money to build has actually turned out to be too small. It can only host one boat. We need to enlarge that dock, and we need to build a docking facility at the north end of Mud Island. Mud Island is really a peninsula. It actually connects to the land. Right where it does that, and where the Wolf River comes in, we'd like to put a second dock. We have 2 steamboat companies who do the touring. Viking is about to enter the market, and Viking has said that they will be in Memphis once they get going every single day within 4 or 5 years. Every day they'll have a boat here in Memphis. And the other 2 companies are growing too. So if we want to maintain that that position, we've got to do something with our docks. In addition to that, as you may know, that we're redoing with a federal grant, redoing the cobblestones. And we have some entrepreneurs in Memphis who think if you put a dock at the end of that cobblestone, you can tie up a restaurant, put restaurants there. Bass Pro has wanted a dock since they've been built, because for their fishing tournaments or to show the boat, we'd like to put one there. And then I've never been to Austin, Texas, but I don't know if anybody here has, but they have a lake in their downtown. We're proposing to dam up the north end of the harbor on Mud Island, clean that water, and we'd have a huge lake down there for boating and swimming and just recreation. And it also would help develop the east side of that shore along with the west side of the shore. So if I may, we got a video I want to play for you that kind of overviews that.
This is much more than just another foot race through city streets. The signs, the cheers, the kids, all up bright and early to support St. Jude is what makes this marathon.
Richard Ransom did not narrate.
I don't know why I love you like I do. Out of all the changes that you put me through, used all my money and my cigarettes, and I haven't seen how to have you yet. I wanna know, won't you tell me I love to stay? Take me to the river.
Good. I recorded that yesterday. A couple things. First of all, the names are all placeholder names. That's just to put it up there. Secondly, I didn't mention the Ferris wheel. We are in conversation with we're not buying a Ferris wheel, but in conversations with a company who is interested in putting a Ferris wheel down there. So that's a huge ask. Frankly, the docks for the cruising boats is my personal top priority, because we have to get that done here in the next year or two if we're going to maintain a presence of those boats here in Memphis. And the other two, the other thing we couldn't afford out of our budget. You see what our budget is, so it's time, I think, to ask big of Nashville. So that's a very broad overview of our legislative agenda. I'll take any questions or comments or whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got Councilman Jones. Any other colleagues while I'm looking around? You got Councilman Jones. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Quite an ambitious plan. My question, Mr. Mayor, what's our plan if Nashville says no?
Well, focus on those docks where the cruise lines come. Try to get that funded. How? I don't know.
What if they say no to that?
I know, that's what I meant.
Okay,
We're going to have to focus internally here in Memphis on how to do that. We estimate just the docks for those boats, the one expanded Beale Street Landing and the one up north, is $25 million. I don't have an answer for you on how we're going to do that right now. The boat companies are interested in helping pay some of that cost, but not $25 million. I don't have an answer for you right now. Because as you've seen our CIP budget, just like I have, it's stretched pretty thin. So, but it's a priority, and if we get a no from Nashville, we're going to have to come up with something when we present our budget to you in April.
Okay. Well, I'll just say I love this. I don't think that anybody in here would say no to it. I just happened to be online yesterday because Viking advertises a lot on 60 Minutes. And I just happened to go to their website, and it was yesterday that I found out I think it's August or September of 2022 is when they're going to start selling here domestically. And that's something that we do not want to miss out on. And so I've always advocated for, we need to be a city of amenities, things to do. And then sometimes, folks, taxes pay for those things. So we can say, and Mayor, I know, you know how you feel about this, but when people see things like that, see the amenities, you think people in Austin are saying, dog, I don't want to, we have all these nice amenities, and they pay for it. But do they say, well, they probably hem and haw about the taxes too. But when they look at everything that Austin has to offer, and they see, people go to cities, people move to cities for stuff like this. We haven't done this, people. In the past 20 years, we haven't made these types of investments. I talked about it, investments in ourselves. I'm all aboard. Thank you.
Thank you. Also,
Thank you.
let the record reflect that Chairman Colvett is here and Councilwoman Logan are present. Colleagues, any other questions or comments for the mayor?
I'm sorry, I did not mention the third item for actually legislation. I'm sorry. I got so excited about the video. Now maybe back to some hard-nosed stuff. You've heard me enough, and some of you share this concern, that state law allows the proliferation of guns throughout our city, but in my opinion does not sufficiently punish the wrongful use of those guns. Example is, Chairman Carlisle and I are on the interstate, and I shoot a gun at Chairman Carlisle, and I do not hit him. That is an aggravated assault. There's zero mandatory jail time for me. In fact, the law says the court has to presume that I get probation unless there's some special circumstance. So we literally have had interstate shooters who get no jail time because, in my opinion, the law is weak. And that's what I focus on, is the violent crime, especially aggravated assault. Those were what drives the number. And I'm looking, there's a lot of bills being discussed in Nashville, and we're trying to work our way through those in the next 30 days to figure out which one that we support.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilwoman Robinson.
I just have one question. So if you were riding along and someone tried to shoot me, you mean to tell me that is not attempted murder?
Well, it depends on the facts and circumstances. And I didn't practice criminal defense law, so maybe somebody here at MPD can explain you the difference. If they don't have sufficient proof, because not every time do they have the proof of, I remember the mens rea, the intent to murder you. If they don't have the proof of that, it's aggravated assault.
Our former criminal defense attorney says that's accurate.
Okay.
I can't explain you why.
And then it makes sense to me. If you shoot at me, you are attempting to kill me.
Well, that's not the way the law is now. I can't explain to you why, but I'd be okay with that law if you just made them all, attempted murder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here. So just to sum it up, looking at your agenda, we have revenue sharing for recurring revenues so that we're getting our fair share of the state's ongoing revenues, in addition to the fact that they're generating a massive surplus. We have some funding requests, which you've listed, the Waterfront District being the most ambitious, Left Wichita Center, Wolf River Greenway, and the Brooks Museum, which obviously the Brooks and Wolf River fold into parts of the waterfront. Public safety, violent crime, which sounds more like truth in sentencing and some aggravated. And one of the things that I'll say that the mayor just touched on that we as a body need to do is get Jigsaw down here. As the mayor mentioned, there are several legislators at the state level that have and are proposing different ways to approach truth in sentencing. And all of them have ripple effects, whether it's fiscal or not. So we probably need to get Jigsaw in here and stay close to them throughout this next legislative season. I'll be interested to see what the administration, as they do their due diligence, does as well. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. And colleagues, as you know, Wednesday, the Shelby County delegation of the State General Assembly is meeting, and we'll meet tomorrow as well. But again, if there are things that are on the mayor's legislative priorities that we want to support as a body, we really need to incorporate that into ours as well. So happy to take feedback via your staff, and certainly tomorrow if we.
So what's behind all these crimes?
If we need to be. Richard, can't get him out of here. Colleagues, any other questions for the mayor as far as this discussion item? All right, seeing none, we will move to item number 1, and the mayor is here to present his appointee. But item number 1, the appointment to Memphis and Shelby County Airport Authority of Mrs. Belinda Anderson. Can I please have a motion and a second to hear this item? Second. Moved by Colvette, and I think I heard Councilman Ford as the second. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
I think most of you are familiar with Ms. Anderson. She had a, 20-year career at the airport. 23-year career at the airport. I think that's an invaluable quality that we don't currently have on the board at the Airport Authority. Customer service, I think sometimes is lacking at the airport, and I really would love to have a board member who's very aware of that. And if I may have her make a statement.
Absolutely. Mrs. Anderson, welcome. If you would give us your name and address for our record and then a brief statement, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Belinda Anderson. My address is 4639 Perkins Manor Cove, Memphis, Tennessee, 38117. Thank you, Chairman Carlisle, and good afternoon, and thank each and every one of you for your consideration. I would also like to thank the mayor for the appointment. If I am appointed, it will certainly be a full circle moment and opportunity for me. For 23 years, I worked with Republic, Northwest, and Delta Airlines, and mostly in the Memphis airport. I had the opportunity to work with the Airport Authority on a couple of occasions, which is why it's a full circle moment for me. I began my airline career as a flight attendant for 9 years. After that, I took a ground position to become the supervisor of what was then called the World Club, the Memphis World Club, which is now the Delta Crown Room, or no longer Crown Room, I'm sorry, the Delta Club. But in that capacity, I was appointed as the lead liaison to work with the airport authority to build the brand-new airport that was in the upper concourse. It was a prototype airline club, and I was thrilled to be a part of that. I worked with the airport authority. I went to every committee meeting. I went to every airport meeting. I also attended the team meetings, the design meetings, until that club was built. That is my club. I still consider it my club. After that, I retired, and Governor Bredesen appointed me to the Tennessee Aeronautics Commission, where I work with the airport authority again to present my fellow commissioners several funding requests for runway extensions and the Y extension in the B concourse. I am also an entrepreneur and a community volunteer. I've had several businesses, but specific to this conversation, I had a mobile cappuccino coffee business. I was a minority woman-owned business. I was in 2 locations, but wanted to bring my coffee business to the airport. Cappuccino was not even thought of at that time. There was no Starbucks in the entire city. So I got involved with the long process of applying, and I was denied approval. You never know when or if you can circle back around to a point in time in your life. But here I am before you now, asking you to allow me to be a voice for the other Belindas out there that just want an opportunity. I have served on so many boards and committees and too numerous to name, but here lately, I've been chairing diversity and inclusion committees. We are making progress in our community, but we still have a lot of work to do. You see, I believe in something bigger than myself. I just want to continue to help all the other small minority marginalized women-owned businesses that have a vision but no voice. I believe that it is upon us, each of us, to make these organizations, boards, and committees a reflection of the community that we live in. This full circle opportunity will allow me to do my part to leave this community better than what I found it in, for my children and hopefully for yours too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. I've done several appointments in my brief stint here, and I have to say it's one of the finest statements that I've heard from this dais, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Who did you get? I got Councilman Warren, and I think Jones, and then Councilman Ford is our cue for now. Councilman Warren, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd just like to say I think probably the toughest role she had was president of the Snowden and Central PTAs with my wife and with me. And I am firmly convinced handling that the airport authority will be no problem for you. And we're really glad to have you volunteering to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Warren. Councilman Jones, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. At one time, I was the council's liaison to the airport authority. And it was in that capacity that I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Darrell Thomas, who is the person that the mayor is not renominating to this particular body. So it was at 12:03 on last week that I received a text message from him indicating that he had communicated with the mayor, and the mayor said that he was not going to be reappointing him to that position. It was at 2:33 that I sent an email to the mayor indicating that asking him to reconsider his non-appointment of Mr. Thomas. And it was at 6:54 that I learned that it was going to be you, Mrs. Anderson. So my objection to this has absolutely nothing to do with you, because there is no way that I could have known who the person was. So I hold you as well as Mr. Anderson in very high regard, as I do Mr. Thomas. But having served in that capacity, you know, in many instances, he was just the one sole voice speaking up for Black businesses. And so if previously we've reappointed without much conversation, No intros like
Today,
this.
that's now 218
Mrs. Pam
homicides
Clary.
so far this year. Nearly
We can't get
a dozen
rid of
them
Richard, can we?
just behind all these
Mr.
crimes.
Michael
Is your
Keeney,
life in danger?
Mr. Pace Cooper, and Mr. James Karras, who's serving in his third time on the Airport Authority. So we're not moving in any step forward if we are replacing a voice where we had the opportunity to appoint 2 advocates on the Airport Authority for this. And so I don't want to see us lose what will be a strong voice on this. But colleagues, in one of the most powerful, one of the largest budgets in this city, the Airport Authority, the hub that drives our economic engine here, we will not have a single black male representation on that board at the Memphis and Shelby County Airport Authority. Now, if Mr. Mayor, if you were to come to us with Mrs. Anderson for any one of those previous appointments for Mr. Keeney, Mr. Cooper, or Mr. Karras, I would not raise one iota of a stink about this. But the fact that we will be taking away a voice and we may be replacing it with one that's better, we don't know. But I know that firsthand, the one that we will be replacing has been one of the strongest advocates for black businesses that I've seen on the boards and commissions throughout this city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilman Ford. Oh,
If I may, just,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Keeney was not a city employee.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the county, just for the record, the 2 county appointments are Michael Keeney and Gregory Fletcher.
Yeah.
Councilman Ford, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I got that same information that you got, Councilman Jones. Sometimes change is good. If you want to look at our airport right now, there has not been any change. We have lost more. You know, it's a shame if you want to go somewhere here, you got to go by way of. Or you got to be delayed 3-4 hours, whereas you can get in your car and drive there. We've had that problem with who's been there. Ms. Anderson, I've been knowing you a long time. You're one of the hardest working people I know.
Thank you.
Like you said, you used to fly on the planes. You, from one thing to another, always came back to the Airport Authority. Okay? You were recognized by our governor. You've done so many different things. We need that change because I know you will probably make that difference. You've always made a difference in anything that you put your mind to. I'd ask my colleagues to please appoint this lady. Reasons why, he's been there. He's done that. Time for this change. Let's move a little bit further. Because like I said, if you go to our airport, the sign says International Airport. We are not that. We're worse than the one down in Mississippi right there before you get to Tunica. I mean, I'm going to just be honest with you now. Okay? We used to be. We're not anymore. It's a shame. That's why we need a person like you. You work for these different airlines. Maybe you can bring some of them back to us, being on that authority, because that's what we kind of need, okay? You know the different people that we need to talk to get all of these different things done. They've had their chance. Time for you to come in, help them along the way, okay?
Thank you.
And I asked all my colleagues, hey, you got a great person right here. She's been that way years and years. Anything she put her hands on, she makes a difference. And I ask everybody to please support her, along with the mayor. I have nothing against my other man, but he's been there. It's time for a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ford. I've got Chairwoman-elect Swearingen and then Councilwoman Johnson in the queue. Chairwoman.
Thank you very
and-
kindly, Mr. Chair, and I don't know if he has received the attention, but Councilwoman Robinson would like to be a part of the queue as well. have a few questions. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
For being a part and making the presentation. The presentation was exquisite. I've known you and your husband for quite some time, but I have some questions for the mayor. At present, on the airport board, we have 5 whites, 2 blacks, and the 2 blacks being 1 male, 1 female. As I did my research, most of those that are on the board have served 2 terms at least. And I think Karis has served since, is it 2011? Or has he served more than 2 terms? Is there anyone that's present that knows?
I looked at it, was 2011, yes.
Okay.
According to the city's website.
So that's 2 terms. And I was just wondering, Darrell Thomas has only served 1 term compared to the other members of the board who have served at least 2. And I was just wondering why he is being replaced compared to the other members of the board who have served more than 1 term. And there was a flex of diversity, somewhat, with it being 5 whites on the board, 2 African Americans or black individuals, 1 white, 1 black. So now we don't have the black male presence on that board. And I was just wondering, even though I'm delighted for Ms. Anderson with all her background and everything, why could she not have replaced some of the others on the board rather than our limited number of black individuals, only 2, a male and a female, and replacing our male, which curtails the diversity of a male black presence on that board?
A couple of things. First, I'm likely over the next 2 months to come back to you. There'll be another opening on this board. 2 of the 7 members have to be pilots, which limits the number of people you can appoint. But the answer to your main question is, I didn't know Ms. Anderson was interested in serving on the board till recently. And I think she's a better appointee than Mr. Thomas.
I'm not questioning Mr. Thomas being an appointee because he's presently on the board. But my main question is, most of those individuals out of all 6, disregarding Mr. Thomas, have already served 2 terms. He's only served 1. What places him in the predicament of being the replacement?
Thought I just said it. I knew Ms. Anderson's interested in the position. I think she's a better person to appoint.
Why couldn't she replace some of those others that have had tenure on the board?
I thought I just said it. I did not know she was interested in the position when those others came up for appointment.
That's not answering my question.
That's a direct answer to your question. You don't understand my answer.
I don't, because the others have been there.
What years did I reappoint those?
Sir?
What years did I reappoint those?
All of them have served at least 2 terms.
I know, but that's not my question. When did I reappoint them? In 2017, 2018, 2019?
Well, I know Karis was reappointed in 2011.
Well, I wasn't mayor in 2011.
Okay. Now, knowing all of this, having this knowledge since you've been the mayor, all of them have been on the board for at least 2 terms with the exception of Darrell Thomas. Darrell Thomas is the one that you selected to be replaced. And I'm wondering why he has not have been afforded the same opportunity as the other board members on the airport authority.
Back when I was a lawyer, I'd say asked and answered.
That's
I answered your question.
I have not received an answer.
Yes, you did.
You have not answered my question.
Yes, I did.
You just said that you felt that, and I agree with her being a great candidate, but that's not answering my question as to why she's replacing the one board member out of 7 on the airport authority that has only been there one term, opposed to the others who have been there 2.
For the 3rd time, I did not know Ms. Anderson was interested in the board when the other appointments came up. I've not appointed one person to the board that you didn't vote on. And at those times, I did not know Ms. Anderson was interested.
And you're right, I didn't vote on them because they have been there since 2011 and I came on in 2016. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairwoman-elect. Council, and just to clarify, these are 7-year terms, colleagues. You'll see it at the top of your sheet. So they roll off. The last appointee of the city was Pamela Clary, and her term ends in 2026, so she was appointed in 2019. And just subtract 7 years from the end of their appointment dates, and you'll know when they were appointed and or reappointed. I've got Councilwoman Johnson and then Councilwoman Robinson in the queue.
Thank you, Chair. Mrs. Anderson, I truly appreciate you being willing to serve in this capacity. Now, you've heard the comments that Councilman Jones had. Do you have any additional information you would like to add or share to that to kind of reassure the citizens, women, that you're the person for this particular position and address some of the issues that he spoke about?
I can't really address his specific issues. However, I am an advocate for women and minority-owned, specifically businesses, have been the entire time that I've served on boards and committees, and I will continue to do that in this capacity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Robinson, the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Belinda Anderson, for your presentation on today, and thank you, Mayor, for your responses. I know it's the purview of the mayor to make recommendations to this council, and he has made his recommendation. But I would have to say that I appreciate the work of Darrell Thomas. He lives in District 3, the airport is in District 3, and we welcome you, if this council deems it appropriate, to the District 3 appointment at the Airport Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I've got Councilwoman Logan and then Councilman Jones, and we'll try and kind of round it out there, if that's okay. Councilwoman Logan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And thank you, Ms. Strickland, and I'm glad to have you here, and appreciate your presentation. I heard you mention that there's going to be another appointment soon, and you've heard the voice of the council members. I wanted to know, did you find that was important? And if so, would you be open to looking for African-American male that is qualified and capable, or receiving one if someone came to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman Logan. Councilman Jones, take us home.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's new knowledge, but what would be if that's the case, Mr. Mayor, could that Ms. Anderson not serve in that capacity? That wasn't my comment, my initial comment, if that's the case, because I'd rather have 2 strong advocates than just one, which is Mr. Thomas right now. But I just want to reemphasize the timeline of everything. I received the text message at 12:03. I corresponded with the mayor at 2:33. I was informed by him at 6:54 of who the nomination was. So, Ms. Anderson, I hold you and Calvin in the highest regard. This has absolutely nothing to do with you. Mr. Anderson has absolutely nothing to do with your wife, because I had no idea of who the nominee was going to be. It could have been whomever it would have been. The statements that I'm making here today would have been exactly the same, and I emphasize that. But I would, I would say, hey, if there's a nomination coming up, I would move to hold Mrs. Anderson's nomination until that time.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
that position that's open up is limited to be a pilot.
Those are my, well,
Yep.
I didn't get a second.
Okay. Colleagues, I'm going to move this to a vote. All those in favor of appointing Mrs. Belinda Anderson to the Memphis and Shelby County Airport Authority Board signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
The ayes, in the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, it's come to my attention that we may have a special item or an added item, number 5, to today's agenda. City Court Clerk Lowry, if you wouldn't mind coming forward. Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
The council has the, I'm sorry. Council has the authority to approve the city court clerk's deputies. And there is an opening now in city court clerk. City court clerk Lowry has that appointment. And I've sent via email a letter to the chairman, which is the normal way to do it, recommending the person and setting forth the salary. And if it's okay, could you read the letter?
Yes. Colleagues, the letter would read as follows. Dear Chairman Carlisle, subject to council approval, I hereby recommend that Calvin W. Williams be appointed city court clerk to the City Court Clerk Division as deputy clerk at a salary of $105,022. And then we go on and say I've attached biographical information, but I don't have that with me today. Sincerely, Jim Strickland, Mayor. So with that, colleagues, what I would like to do is move to the floor the appointment of Calvin W. Williams as deputy court clerk with same night minutes so that we can take this to the full council agenda tomorrow afternoon so that Mr. Williams can get into position effective immediately.
Point of inquiry, are we hearing from Mr. Williams today?
Yes, sir. I believe so. Yes, Mr. Williams and Clerk Lowry are both here.
Okay.
If you'd like to hear from him, fine.
So can I get a motion and a second with
So
same?
moved.
All right. I'm going to do moved by Smiley, seconded by Councilwoman Johnson. Clerk Lowry, the floor is yours.
Well, you've all received my emails regarding this appointment, so you know how many times I've made this request, and I'll let Mr. Williams take it from there. He was in that office when I came in, and he is extremely knowledgeable, and I'm glad that he's consented to be nominated for this position.
Good evening, board members. My name is Calvin Williams. My address is 8577 Meadow Green Drive, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. I'd like to thank Mr. Lowry for his recommendation and his support and his confidence. I also like to thank the mayor likewise. Would like to thank the board for the consideration. A little bit about me. I'm a lifelong Memphian. I'm 59 years old. My work history consists of circuit court. Also was the first administrative assistant to the Shelby County Commissioners. I also served as the chief administrator to the Shelby County Commissioners. I've been the EOC liaison to the county. I've also served in the city capacity of senior clerk, program administrator. I've also served as chief deputy from the last administration, interim chief deputy. And I also have I'm serving now currently as supervisor of 2 different departments, finance department and the data entry department. I'm supervising over 23 employees, 24 employees, and that's what I'm currently doing. So I appreciate the consideration. My motto and my background consists of public service. I'm a person who highly feels like public service is the number one issue in that office, and that's what I'm about.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, any questions or comments for our appointee? All those in, yes, Councilwoman Robinson. Floor is yours, ma'am.
So I have gotten some evidently misinformation. What is our process for what we are currently doing? Because we have put Mr. Lowry off over and over and over again. What is the process of the council? And how is the mayor playing? How do we get here today so we won't have that happen again?
So what you're referring to, I think, is the charter issue at hand that is currently going through the judicial system. What is in place, however...
Excuse me, Chairman, that is not correct.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's not correct.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. The process, so this is from Attorney Wade. The process is that HR works with the city court clerk to fill his deputy position. HR recommends to the mayor with a salary recommendation. The mayor makes a recommendation of his appointment to the council with a designated salary. The council votes it up or down.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, all those in favor of appointing Mr. Williams with same 9 minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The decision is unanimous. Mr. Williams, congratulations. Colleagues.
Mr. Chairman, one last comment. I'm afforded 2 chief deputies. I will be coming back to you soon with another request for an appointee. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, moving on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving on to the final item on today's personnel agenda is a presentation regarding current police officer numbers, year-over-year attrition, and recruiting efforts. All council districts were requested by me. If we could have... you know. And for the record, Chief Smith is out and couldn't be with us today. So Mr. Boucher here. Hello. Chief Davis, thank you. So I'll set the stage of why I requested this and what's going on. It really is unrelated to what's coming up. Hold on, everybody. All right, so it was unrelated at the time of what's coming up in public safety as far as the referendum ordinance. The reason for this is that we as a body have appropriated a significant amount of money over the last couple of fiscal years that I've been here, in addition to the general operating budget, sales tax referendum money, ARPA dollars, CIP dollars. And so this is to talk about kind of where we are in deploying that capital in these recruiting efforts and what we're seeing. And remember, some of it is still in the process. As Chief McGowan gave me an analogy about something unrelated, we're still putting the car together, so to speak, before we can go out and drive it. But I wanted to get an update because we are the appropriating body and we're the ones responsible to voters when we're sending tens of millions of dollars out the door. The other thing I'd like to say that I think is critically important as we go into this conversation is when we talk about police recruitment and retention, it's not either or, it's both when it comes to public safety and how we address public safety. Meaning, I feel like as a body, we often get into this, I'm on police only side, or I'm on community investment only side, and we start talking past each other. It's not and or, either or, it's both. So we have to walk and chew gum. We have to focus on police recruiting and retention while we focus on community investment. And so I just want to make sure, and that's why I asked for GVIP to come on the next committee so that we're talking about both community intervention and investment as we're talking about recruiting and retaining officers. And I don't want that to get lost in the translation because I know other members feel the same way I do. I feel like we get put into a box and it's like, well, that guy's only pro-police and doesn't care about the community. That's just not the case. And so I think it's important that that just sets the record straight so that we don't get into this, either or conversation. So with that being said, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. And I'll turn the floor over.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Fonda Fouché. I'm the Talent Management Officer for the City of Memphis. I wasn't sure if I had to give my address. Not for community meeting. Okay. And this is Assistant Chief Sean Jones. So I am going to start with going over the MPD recruiting and retention update. As you know, we have been on this journey since 2016. And since 2016, we have hired over 800 police officers, and we have graduated over 740. The plan for 2022 and 2023 is to hire 300 officers per year, but we have seen a decrease in applications by 47%. The next class starts in January. We have a class of 78 that will be starting in January with that includes our returning PSTs. And our goal for the July class is 150 police recruits. Our current complement is 1,973 officers. We have seen an increase in resignations of 57%, and we've seen a retirement rate increase of 5%. Since 2016, we have accepted over 18,000 applications. In 2020, we did see a 47% decrease in applications. In some departments, I did give everyone an article from Route 50, and it actually shows that the national average, some departments have seen as much as a 70% drop in job applications. And this just shows the 800 officers that we have hired by class. Again, with the article that I sent over, a lot of agencies are showing hiring is down by 5%, with larger police departments struggling more than smaller ones. So the ARPA request, we were granted $13.5 million over the next 3 years. So far, with the relocation assistance, which $10,000 was approved for out of state candidates, we made our first payment to 4 laterals. The class starting on January 17th will be eligible to receive. And then we also have a fire lateral class starting in February that will also be able to receive relocation assistance if they qualify. We also have the $15,000 sign-on bonus for police recruits. And the January 17th class will be eligible to receive that. Fire laterals the fire lateral class that starts in February will be able to receive a $10,000 sign-in bonus. As far as hiring, we are still actively recruiting for the recruiters and the professional development coordinator, but we did hire a retired military recruiter who actually interned with us before he retired, and he started today. As far as travel, marketing, and advertising, we do have a new marketing campaign, a new era in public safety, and I actually have a handout to give to you related to that campaign. We also been working with Deloitte on a recruiting 360 software, and we also have new commercials coming soon. And then with the $5,000 referral bonus for employees, we did launch a referral bonus sweepstake and to promote the increased referrals from current officers, and we did our first payout in November. And so this just this just talks about our recruiting initiatives. We have a team of 12. We have 8 background investigators. So far, we have, in 2021, we recruit with 25 universities and colleges, 15 military bases, and we have been, in the last 3 or 4 months, we have done over 26 local hiring events. We also started our City of Memphis Careers newsletter, which is a weekly newsletter where we can highlight hiring about police and fire. Next up, we have MPD retention. Attrition is higher than normal this year. National resignations have actually jumped by 18%, while retirement rates are up by 45%. We did a breakdown of the 85 resignations we've had thus far in 2021, and I have the breakdown of the numbers of where police officers, the reason for their resignation. And to help with retention, we are creating a better defined career path. We will continue our promotions on a 2-year promotional cycle. We are also talking with MPA about improving the promotions process. Okay. We've also implemented a take-home car program that Chief Jones would talk more about, and then we have the 9% opportunity in 2021, 2022, and 2023 for public safety. And this just shows the slide of our MPD retention bonus update from the money that we got from the Crime Commission. And so we're hoping to see the same success with the 9% bonus payment that we are offering. And these are our upcoming class dates for 2022. Also, I just want to remind everyone to please refer anyone that's interested in becoming a police officer to the Join MPD website. And that's all that I have.
Thank you. You did great.
Thank you.
Great. I know Morgan over here is intimidating, so you did great. All right. Chiefs, do you guys have anything to add before we go to the council?
Please.
Yeah, actually nothing on that unless you have some questions, because we kind of worked together on and put it together.
All right. I've got Councilwoman Robinson in the queue first, and then Councilwoman Robinson.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that I appreciate the presentation. This is much better than we started out with 6 years ago. And I see the progress that we've made in recruiting police officers. But if you would go back to page 2, and we talk about the strategy for hire recruits, and here's the progress. Your goal was 300 recruits, but you hired 800 P2s, and you graduated 741. Then you drop down to bullet 2 and say that you plan to hire another 300 P2s, whatever that is. That's the regular police officer, yes. Right? And then you have a new hiring class process, but you want to also, you have a class of 78 returning PSTs, and you currently have 40. So help me understand, how many PSTs have we had over this same period of time since 2016? And then how many have moved up? And how many, and I see that we have 40 left, but have we not brought any more in to fill that gap?
Yes, we are actively hiring for PSTs. We're also doing a lot of recruiting for the Blue Path program. We're actually starting a partnership with Shelby County Schools and also Bill Gibbons on a public safety academy where we can recruit students starting their junior year instead of waiting until their senior year. Our complement for PSTs is 115, and we've maintained complement since 2016, and so now this is what we've had left. So that means they've all gone back to the academy, with the exception of these 40.
Okay, so we're doing what we intended to do, yes, is to feed our own and have a pipeline, okay? Yes, ma'am. So we do understand that police officers are like teachers. Everybody wants to be a teacher and a police officer, but their end goal is upward mobility. Yes. And we don't have as many jobs in management as we do at the ground level. So I see where you have developed another chart, which I am very impressed with, about how they move from one segment to the other. But how do we incentivize police officers to want to continue to be a police officer, because everybody can't go to the top or move up? So how do we incentivize them and treat them like people who are valued? Because after a certain amount of time and a job that's highly, you're under a lot of pressure, you want to feel some incentive. So what are we doing to incentivize them to want to stay there? Because our teachers are you have the same problem they do as the school district. They don't feel incentivized. So we got to make sure that we do something a little different so that we can encourage those men to stay in those positions and they feel like they're still making some career progress.
Yes, ma'am. I can answer part of that. Sean Jones, Assistant Chief over the Administrative Services. Some of the things that we're trying to do is we're putting together the take-home car program. That's going to be one of the things that we do. The first phase of that will begin pretty much about in February of this year. I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay, so let me ask you a question about that. If I take a police car home, then all my neighbors know I'm a police officer, then they worry me about everything, little thing that happened in the neighborhood. Is that an incentive?
Yeah. Well, what we want is we want people who want to actually take those cars home to be a part of the community and to participate in the neighborhood watch programs. That's the intent of it, to help to reduce crime in that community. So if he does his job, he or she correctly, crime will go down. They'll get less calls and less annoyance.
You didn't answer my question. What incentivizes that police officer to want to do that in his community, then come to work for you every day?
Yes, ma'am. But just simply being a police officer, number one, you're about public safety. You're about making your community better. And that's the incentive, me making my community better for everyone to live in, to include me, you, and everyone else.
Okay. Councilman, I'd like to add to that too. That's part of what we are trying to do in the police department, is shift the culture and help our officers to understand that our work isn't just take, right. And that the work is all about incentives, that there is a lot of joy, if you will, in participating in your own community and having a stake in your own community, and it will be part of their performance criteria as well, that they participate in X amount of community activities if they have that take-home vehicle. And we're trying to get them to understand that working for the city is a give and take relationship. It's just not about receiving. Everybody benefits, everybody wins. And we do believe that it'll be a cost benefit to the city in the long haul, because most take-home car programs, you have much less maintenance on the vehicles, and officers take care of those cars. They have a longer life as well. So that's just a little bit more of what the incentive should be for our officers. We want to make sure we have the right officers receiving those cars too.
Okay, thank you.
And giving them opportunity to move throughout the organization is very important too. We don't want them to get stuck in one particular position too long. So that mobility, every 2 to 3 years, you have an opportunity to go and work in other assignments. Those are some of the things that they look for. Also, the upward mobility. She talked about the promotional testing, not staying in a position for an extended period of time. When I hear conversations from officers that have been here for a long period of time, some of them have stayed in positions for 18 years, too long. So every 2 years allows us an opportunity to move. And with that comes a financial incentive along with that.
Now you're talking my language. Economic incentive. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think they would appreciate that. But I just wanted to remind you of the mindset of people so that we all will be successful as a community. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Job well done.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I think I saw John Covington and Tommy Malone perk up over there. We've got Councilwoman Logan and then Morgan, Easter, Thomas, and Jones. Councilwoman Logan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation information. I am glad to hear of some of the things that you are doing. I know when we introduced the resolution for the public safety from the ad hoc committee, some of the things have been addressed in here. I wanted you to give a little bit more information on how you are looking to grow from within or grow from inside the city and improve the relationship and the image or the respect for the police department in the eyes of our youth and our young people that we'll be recruiting from, and how are we developing that relationship to really entice young people from within to go into law enforcement. Number two, we talked about, I heard you mention about promotions, and that was a part of the ask in the ad hoc committee's resolution to really make sure that the officers know clearly how they can be recruited. We had a backlog, a long backlog for them being promoted, and how we've improved in that way. And just overall, if you all could send an update on where we are on the ad hoc committees and the council requests from you for the recommendations that we put forth last year. If you could just send an update on where we are on those, that would be great. But the first two questions I would like to know on hiring and building from within in our city and the promotions.
To build from within, what we're working on now is developing even a better partnership with Shelby County Schools. We want to start a public safety academy, and that's where we will start reaching students in 10th and 11th grade instead of waiting to 12th grade to try to convince them that they want to have a career in law enforcement. So we've been meeting with Bill Gibbons, the school system, and also the MPA on how we can get their program started so we can recruit students from high school.
Okay. I need to follow up. I have a follow-up question for that. Okay. Now, earlier we talked about, or last year we mentioned about the programs that you have for students in elementary, and I know it was
we still have the Dare Great programs.
And the other one, it was
the Police Athletic League, the PAL program.
No, not
Explorers.
Is it?
Explore. Yeah, Explore. Those types of programs, including that what you said, Chief. But I know Explore was one of them that was kind of like in a continuum to, if they stuck with it, you know, they would want to be a policeman. So I just wanted to get some feedback on that.
So I can speak to that. Actually, the Explore program is very similar to the PST program, but captures students at an earlier age than even our PSTs, and takes them through various community types of actions, interactions with the police officers, learning a little bit about the criminal justice system, giving them forums to have open discussions about having safe encounters with the police. Some of that is what we're working on as we want to expand the Police Athletic League and stand up and explore program. Right now, our Police Athletic League, they service a group of young people, but we don't reach near as many young people as we could. So we plan to expand our Police Athletic League, our PAL, so that not only do we have various types of activities and recreational activities for our young people, but it's an educational opportunity for them as well. And to start them in an Explorer program, which will eventually matriculate to a PST, which will eventually matriculate to a police officer. So it's really, sort of grabbing our young people at a very early age, similar with our GREAT program, GREAT and DARE. Those kids that we just graduated, over 500, they had an opportunity to spend 10 weeks with officers and learn about anti-drugs, anti-guns, and we hope to continue that type of education all the way through their school age, years, and matriculate on into maybe the Criminal Justice Academy that the Crime Commission is proposing as well.
Thank you. That answered me. And the last thing was the promotions, and that was the only question I had.
So with our promotions, we are wanting to continue on a 2-year cycle because we have, with our resignations, we see that career advancement is important. So being able to have them on a continuous 2-year promotional cycle, we think will help with that. Also, I wanted to go back with the public safety campaign. I do want to give you what the new campaign will look like, and that is going to also involve the community as well.
The 2-year cycle on promotions, what can you explain?
So I'll tell you a little bit, because I've learned a little bit about the history that there was sort of a moratorium on promotions for our officers. Many of our officers stayed in the same rank for several years. And so you have some that haven't quite gotten over the fact that they felt like their career should be further along than what they are. So now what we're looking at is ensuring that we promote every 2 years. We're even working on leadership academy and institute so that we can start training our officers so they can be ready for supervision when the time comes, and keep them on a career path that develops them and gets them ready to lead, in various capacities, no matter where they are. Some of the morale, so to speak, and some of the incentive for our officers to stay is that they're starting to see that we're looking at what a good career path would look like for them, starting at the lowest levels, and for them to at least have some goals that they can set in their careers to say, in 2 years from now, I can be a sergeant, or 2 years from now, I can be 3 years from that, I can be a supervisor, and they don't feel like they're getting stuck, and we're creating more opportunities for them at the bottom of the pyramid as opposed to having, so many ranks at the top.
Yeah, and also our next promotional testing is July 2022, and we're working on it now. It's funny now, we're working together to do that.
Oh, great. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're big chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Morgan, and then Easter, Thomas, Jones, and Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this may have been covered in the presentation. I apologize. I got a little distracted. My wife and I were texting trying to find out if the two guys with the trailer in our driveway were unscheduled contractors or if they're there to rob us. So we're going through camera footage trying to figure it out while I had about 8 police officers in front of me. Good news, we're okay. But one of my questions is about it showed up. It was a subcontractor that I didn't recognize, and he showed up on the wrong day. But I go to the goal of 300 recruits. And looking at, so when you say 300 recruits, that's not graduated, but that's enrolled in the academy, correct?
Correct.
And so then to be generous, say we have a 20% attrition, which we haven't had a number that good in about 8 or 9 classes. So of that 300, you then graduate 240. So that's 120 in 2022, on average 120 in 2023. But yet we have had greater attrition rates from the police department every year, more than 120 over the last 9 years. So if we hit our goal, we are still failing to hire more officers than we attrition every year. The number still decreases from 1973 at our current complement. Is that correct?
So,
and so that would be the question: is why are we setting a goal for something that I would believe is not enough?
So our average attrition is somewhere around 150. So in order for us to have gains, we have to hire more or twice as many is that 150 that we know we're going to lose every year if we're going to have the type of gains that we're looking at. This coming year, we hope to hire 300. Even though our goal is for 2023, we have an aggressive campaign where we're bringing on as many officers as we can.
I'm sorry, so is this 300 for the year 2022 and 300 for the year 23? 600 total.
Right.
Minimum. That was the, okay.
Yeah.
That was,
so we want
I
a
missed-
gain
okay.
of
So
300.
it's for both years. That's a terrific goal. Okay, now I'm much happier. Okay.
Well, we realize that the attrition rate is something that we can work on to some extent, but we'll have natural attrition, retirements, separations for whatever reason. But what we're hoping to do is impact the number, as the presentation illustrated. We had 36 people that left to go to another agency in our area. And we're hoping to shift that trend so that our officers will stay with us, not just with incentives or carrots, but feeling good about coming to work every day, knowing that they have a career path and a department that's looking out for their welfare and so on.
300 is an ambitious goal. We have had that goal in the past, and I think we have continually missed it, as you can look at our numbers.
Yeah.
And so whatever you'll need to get to that 300, and whether it be a policy or whether it be resources committed from this body or committed from the state or some sort of change in state law, whatever it might be, I would just encourage y'all to make it public, to ask for it over and over and over again if you see that in your mind that you think it would get the job done.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like only afterwards in the years past, we would find out that we hit a hurdle and we didn't achieve that goal. And the ask wasn't made on the front ends. And then there'd be another hurdle and we wouldn't reach that goal. So, starting to see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, in terms of time here on council after 6 years, and we've gone backwards in the number of officers. And I don't want that to be a trend over the next two. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely continue to tweak it. One of the things that we've done already is we began to hire people as they complete their background process. Normally what would happen is they would complete their background process, they would wait, then they may get snatched up by another entity. We're trying to take that off the table now. So we just brought on 12 today doing that.
Councilwoman Easter Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for giving this definitely enlightening presentation. As Councilwoman Robinson says, we definitely needed some updated information on how this process was going for you all. And I just wanted to, I can see that you all are using a variety of strategies in order to recruit. And I just wanted to thank you for broadening those options for the MPD, for the city of Memphis. And also, even if we just glance at the article you provided us, police trends in police workforce nationally, even seeing more strategies and options that we can do. And also just hearing you all's emphasis and wanting to have more Memphians involved in the force, whether from younger or from college or from high school. And so I just want to say I really appreciate that effort, and hopefully we can continue the emphasis on the local recruitment, especially since you all have just been expanding your boundaries on the amount of strategies that you have, and then also just reinforcing to us that this is a national issue and not a Memphis just recruiting issue. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Johnson, and then back to Robinson.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, everyone. Had a couple questions. I'm looking at page 4, and I see the difference in the number of hires each year. What's driving the difference in the totals from year to year? Because, in 1 year, for instance, 127 to 128, we see a difference of 71, stays that way, and then we get back up to 60 or 68.
So our application numbers are down. They have been trending down since 2019. In 2017, the reason I think we had such an increase in applications is that's when we first went to the online application. Okay. And then in 2018, we formed the public safety team. And then in 2019, we took in the most applications we'd ever taken in from 2016. And then in 2020, we had the pandemic. And then, of course, the social climate when it comes to police. Okay.
So if I look at 123 through 126, am I to extrapolate that that's 2016 to 2017? Are these?
123 starts with 2017.
Okay.
Yes.
2017.
So, Councilman Jennifer, can we get the slide back? Just, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Notating, because whether it's two classes, it'd be nice to know which years those are.
Okay.
Because I can't keep up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how many take-home cars have we deployed so far?
So our first, we haven't deployed any yet. Our first batch of cars would be in February. Okay. We've already ordered those cars, so we're waiting for them to come in, but February is their target date.
So do we have an idea of how many would be in the first rollout?
30 would be in there, because that's going to come from that general fund money, okay. That first 30.
Great.
Yes.
And then looking at the recruitment efforts, the output, universities and colleges, can we get a list of those universities, how geographically dispersed are they? Also, are there any historically black colleges and universities included in that list? Which
yes.
one? So
yes.
One of the things that I would contend, though, is that there are a lot of people who, if I go to Morgan State, I may not necessarily have Memphis on the radar screen. Mm-hmm. But if somebody goes there to say, hey, Memphis, the mayor there, the Shelby County mayor went to Morehouse College. Mm-hmm. And we have Lamorne College here. I just think that growing up here, my first 18 years spent, there were a lot of HBCUs that I didn't know about growing up here, and I went to one. Mm-hmm. So how many other people who did not grow up in Memphis? Memphis is not even on the radar screen. Mm-hmm. And once they look at Memphis, they may say, hey, I see it as potentially being the next Atlanta, the next Charlotte. So I would hope that if we have whatever that list is, that we can expand that.
Yeah, and I will say this right here. I have a friend who's a PIO in Atlanta, and one of the things that she said recently is that she saw our advertisement for individuals, for officers in Atlanta. And, you know, of course, Atlanta has a lot of historically black institutions there.
I will send you that list. Also, one of the things that we are doing, depending on what university we go to, we have asked police officers that actually went to that school or graduate that school to join us on the recruiting trips as well.
Great idea.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you. Thank both of you, everybody, for your presentation and comments. A lot of the things that I have concerns about has already been addressed. But my question still would be, Chief Davis, have you had the opportunity to review the selection process? And are there any particular changes you may have made? So where in the past, if a person had done this in the past, we wouldn't let them come aboard. Now we're going to give them opportunities. And the reason I'm asking that is because it's my understanding that other agencies are a little bit more lenient in regards to recruiting, their selection process. How can we address that one particular concern?
Absolutely. Thank you for your question, Council Member. We have constantly over the last several months looked at the hiring process. We've tweaked it. We've changed some of our policies. I met a young lady the other day who had a tattoo flower that she put on her hand some time ago. I've seen much more offensive tattoos than a flower, but this was somebody that was denied because of our tattoo policy. So we are relaxing some of those policies that don't really fit for this time and season, and we've also relaxed other parts of our process where we have individuals that literally work for the city now who've established a good work record, but because they hadn't achieved, their associate's degree or whatever, they were denied an opportunity. We've changed that. If you have 4 or 5 years of good work experience with no serious problems, we're taking in those applicants. We're taking in a lot of people that, maybe 3 years ago would not have made it through our process for whatever reason. So we are absolutely looking at that. And Chief Jones talked about the fact that we've lost applicants because typically we will wait until we got 45 or 50, in a group to start class. In the meantime, those applicants are being picked up by other people. So we're hiring our officers immediately once they pass the background process, and we're putting them to work in various areas of city government to give them the exposure, let them support, the staff in a myriad of ways.
That sounds great. You also mentioned the fact that you lost 46 officers to other agencies.
Yes, 36,
Have you been able to research and find out why they left?
And we have, and it's for a variety of reasons. Some of them are candid about why they're leaving, and some of them aren't. You have some officers that, quite frankly, may not want to work as hard as Memphis Police. Our officers work hard, compared to Bartlett and some of the other, jurisdictions. I hate to say it, but it's true. And, and maybe that's the best course for that officer, because we need officers who are energetic and can handle the level of work, the magnitude of the work that we have here in the city of Memphis. So, we want to keep our officers here, but we want our officers to be here for the right reasons, too.
They always complain about a difference in salary. Has the salary issue being addressed?
I think we've addressed a lot of incentives for our officers and looking at career path and everything, but that is one area that we have not addressed, and we don't compare very well salary-wise with other agencies in our area. It sort of goes back to, if you work this hard, I think the salary range is something that there's opportunities for us to discuss as far as being competitive with other agencies in our area.
Yeah, that 9% incentive also helps. 9% for the 3 years helps to bring us to where we need to be from a salary standpoint.
But that's that one-time bonus.
Yeah, right. 9%.
Yeah.
Okay. I thank you for your answers, and I think we might need to look forward to how we can assist you in getting that additional salary, because we definitely want the people to stay here in Memphis and to serve the citizens here.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank you.
council member.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Robinson.
Thank you. My last question, and Councilwoman Johnson started the conversation, but I want to know what are our top 3 reasons for rejections so that we can start thinking about what we can do to work with those individuals so that they can overcome those objections.
I know 2 right off the bat be drugs and the physical fitness test that they have to go through. And the drugs, I mean, the laws are what they are. Then the state would not certify them from that standpoint. But the physical part, the running, the battery of testing, we can work with them to help them to get to that point. There has been discussion, and we haven't concluded it, but there has been discussion about once we identify a person, let's say if they who may have missed the run by a couple of seconds, we still could look at hiring that person, because by the time they finish 6 months in the academy, they would be where they need to be because of the physical fitness requirement associated with that. So those are just some of the things that we're looking at.
Okay, so the first one is drugs. So if you have been involved in drugs, so you're out forever, or do you have to be clean for a year? Do you have to go to rehab? What can I do if I've been
So I
involved
talk about
in
the
drugs?
simplest one. The simplest one is marijuana. So ideally, you would not have used marijuana over a 2-year span of time. Because of being a law enforcement officer, you're going to be exposed to that on a frequent basis. So we want to make sure that that's not what you're doing. You're not taking drugs, stealing drugs, using drugs. From the marijuana. Now, the cocaine and the harder drugs are something more difficult. And Post typically does not give us the waiver on those type drugs, those hard drugs. They would not approve a waiver on that, the state.
Okay, so if they've ever taken cocaine in their whole life, that means they cannot be a police officer.
Well, that goes to the state. And if we tried to put that forward, it would go to the state. They would have the last say so. And typically that's been no from a historical standpoint.
Okay, so that's something we need to work on. So people you're saying that it can never be redeemed. Is that basically what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying what the state does. So
okay, I'm just saying, I just need to know what the real is. So you talked about drugs, you talked about the physical ability. What is the third one? Why they're rejected? The third highest reason.
Maybe
no shows and arrest history. I would say no shows. People applying and not showing up for.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
But that's self-imposed,
Right. And then also maybe arrest history.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Logan.
Okay, thank you. Last question. I wanted to ask about the resignation reasons. I noticed that some of them are going to other agencies or career change. Career change was one of the higher numbers. Have we done anything different in terms of training and mental health? That's a part of the ad hoc ad hoc committee's recommendation as well. I know times are so different now than they used to be, and there's a lot more stress on officers and things that they may not be used to dealing with. Have we changed the way we train and the way that we address mental health to help the retention?
Yes, I think from a 360-degree standpoint, so to speak, I know you probably remember that we're hiring a staff clinician, someone who could help evaluate officers' post-traumatic types of incidents that they are exposed to on a regular basis. That's part of the health and wellness program that we're rolling out. We also have a peer support program as well. The MPA and I met last week talking about when we could start up a wellness unit that specifically focuses on officers experiencing unusual situations, even if it's a personal type of problem. Sometimes they're reluctant to go through city resources, EAP, but officers have a tendency to hold hold in emotions and other issues that could manifest themselves in very serious ways out on the street. So we're working so that we can identify, have early warning, and identify amongst their peers when they're experiencing trauma, and finding ways for them to anonymously reach out. We're even exploring expanding an app that really helps them to identify help resources very quickly. We've experienced officers that committed suicide. It's very traumatic for them. It's traumatic for their families as well. So we really want to try to find ways that we can identify, when an officer is going through some type of trauma before it raises to some level that it's out of control. But officer wellness is part of our strategic plan as well. It's one of the core goals of the department for us to roll out a 360-degree wellness program. Our crisis intervention training?
No, I mean training of your officers when they come in, the training academy. Have you done anything any different to better prepare them for the streets of Memphis?
Absolutely. We also have a sort of a family day as well for our officers, and that's so that they can really talk about what they're going to be exposed to. A lot of that training is more being honest about the career that you've taken on and giving them an opportunity to ask questions, and their families an opportunity to ask questions as well about what type of work they'll be doing. A lot of our officers experience problems because their families don't support them as well. I think Zay, I know you are involved in some of that training. Do you have anything else you want to add to that as it relates to emotional well-being for our officers?
From that standpoint, she's covered everything that's being taught at the academy from that standpoint. I wasn't sure if your question was more broad.
Oh yeah, they get that. I'm sorry, I may have gone down the wrong road with you, but they absolutely get training on gang intervention, how they can recognize various types of gangs. Our training is not just broad in that perspective, but it's also broad in the sense of just routine patrol every day, how to patrol a community without being an occupying force as well. So, but we'll be glad to provide some of the curriculum for you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Logan. We got Councilwoman Johnson, and then I'm going to close this out so we can try and stay on target. Councilwoman Johnson.
Hi, thank you. I got a quick question. Please explain to me that drug. How do you determine the drug test? Are they going to take a drug test, or do they have a record of drugs?
No,
how do you identify drugs in their lifetime?
So part of the application and the screening process, we inquire about their either drug use, drug sale, or whether they live with people who sell drugs or things of that nature. So it may not just be drug use. It could be you sold drugs. For example, I had an applicant about 2 weeks ago who actually sold drugs and used drugs. But, they couldn't make it through the process because we wouldn't be able to get the waiver as it is currently. So it's not just using, it's also selling. Or being with family members who sold or going to get drugs for someone or holding drugs for someone. It could be any myriad of situations. But they self-report that information most times.
Those are the most honest people you can find.
Yeah, but then we back it up with, they are.
This is unbelievable, to tell the truth.
Yeah, well, they are. And we're able to back it up by going through their schools. Some of them have it in schools, and we're able to back it up with the reports and stuff, and that's all a part of that package. It's a package that goes with it.
I think y'all need to review that, because if they're willing to come before the police department, apply for a position and say, yes, I sold drugs, I know who sells, you need those people.
Yeah, well, see, they need to be honest. Because if we find out that they're not honest, then we separate them because we can't continue to employ them.
But that's still, hey, y'all need to really rethink that, because I just cannot believe somebody willing to serve and tell you the truth.
They do it.
Would not be a very good candidate. Yeah. Maybe you may not need them to deal with the drugs, but there's a lot of other things they could work on. But I just think
we'll keep massaging our process, Councilmember Johnson. And as it was said before, some of the guidelines are the state's guidelines that we have to comply with, which can be very complicated. But we are working really hard with our applicants to try to get those applicants that are qualified and eager to become police officers, and not holding their past to a point where,
I mean, y'all need to be talking to the mayor. He's going to the legislative body Wednesday, so need to try to address some of those particular issues. Because that's unbelievable. I mean, it's interesting what y'all deal with, but thank you. That's why I was a little confused. How did you know about it? Okay.
Yeah, they self-report.
Thank you, Councilwoman Johnson, and very adept points there. It is interesting, though, because it sounds like you're trying to be accommodating, especially for things as the world is changing around us, maybe not in the state of Tennessee, but the use of marijuana and the past use. The point being is that you have to apply. Our certifications come from the state. And so those police officers to get their certifications as a peace officer, it sounds like there's some conversations that need to have with the state. What is the state body's name? Post, thank you. I know it was an acronym. But Councilwoman Johnson brings up a good point. On a housekeeping note, let the record reflect that Councilman Canale has finally joined us. So he is present. That's right. I appreciate you and all the work you're doing. And I opened up with remarks saying that it's not a conversation about or when we talk about crime and crime prevention in our police department, it's a both. It's not either or, it's both. We have to make investments in our police department. We have to recruit officers, and we have to make investments and do intervention programs like GVIP and community investment, and they've got to walk hand in hand. And I just don't like it when we try and start to put people in corners like we can't do both of them. But what I will ask, and just to make it abundantly clear, there is a labor issue in the United States of America, and that has clearly reached the ranks of the police departments, correct?
Yes.
Would you say in your 30 plus years of law enforcement that this has been the most difficult time to recruit and retain police officers?
I would. Okay. And I think not just because of, the opportunities that people have in other places. We've had a tough couple of years. COVID, I think it shut down recruitment units all over the country. And so now everybody's playing catch up too. When you stop recruiting for an entire year, then you've got a big hole to fill as well.
So as a nationally renowned law enforcement expert with 30 plus years, it is the singular most difficult time you've seen recruiting officers in your career? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Have we in the administration given you every tool that you need to recruit and retain police officers?
I think we can work on some things.
So
for the most part, yes, though.
Okay.
I mentioned a little bit earlier about being competitive. I think that's really important. But for the most part, as it relates to the recruitment campaign, a lot of the work depends on the police department to do what we need to do. Increase the number of recruiters we have, increase the number of background investigators. You can't have the same size units in order to bring on more people. Our marketing reach has to expand beyond just this region. So, and we need to do better even in our own community. So I think we have the resources that we need, and the people are doing a great job with the resources that we have.
I can appreciate that because I understand, again, we have to strike a balance when it comes to the city's operating budget and these buckets of money, how they're being allocated and how they're being appropriated. And I appreciate your want to take and be a good steward of that. Based on the attrition numbers, and Councilman Morgan brought up the point that 300 is a good goal. Like that, we need to set goals, right? We need to have something to aim at. But to take a different position, if you don't have every tool that you need and you fail to hit those goals and attrition trends the direction it is, we will never get to 2,500 officers that this body unanimously supported. Well, not unanimously. We have one dissension. Sorry. I thought we were close. Thank you for correcting the record. this body approved, I think we had 9 or 10, but votes. We'll never get to 2,500 officers. Is that an accurate statement?
That is an accurate statement. That's why we are bringing all the resources to bear. We're using all of the resources that we're being provided and thinking outside of the box about how we do more faster and bringing in other people that you typically wouldn't think of as being part of the recruitment process. We're utilizing our churches and other places for this recruitment campaign. And the folks that we have working with us they're doing their best right now.
And by the way, I know I said 2,500. I mean, at this point, like, I'd be happy if we hit 22, 21, right? I mean, that's where we are. And so I appreciate the updates. And again, as the appropriating body, I think it's important, philosophical differences aside, we are appropriating these dollars. And so it's important that we make sure we track, where they are, how the programs are going, and if adjustments need to be made up or down. But I know that, I guess you've been in position now
6 months.
6 months. All right. It's just time's flying by. It's just so critical that we stop the trend and all the hard work, stop the trend of going negative and all the hard work. And it's not a conversation about overpolicing, it's a conversation about competent compliments. Mm-hmm. And for another conversation, I know Councilman Jones will appreciate this, at least I think you will. I'd love to come back and circle back on some of the recommendations that the Deloitte study had as well. I know that we wanted to afford you some time to get into position, and a lot of those programs like digitizing, they take time to set that course and a plan forward. And today's not the day, but those are the things too that we want to make sure that we're marching forward. And we, again, as the accountable body, are a part of those conversations and having them. I said no, Councilman, I was going to wrap it up, but Councilman Warren wanted to say a few words and then we'll close it out.
I just wanted to say that our next committee was due at 4:30. So if we take like a 3-minute break or a 4-minute break after this closes, we'll start up then.
All right. Colleagues, see no other business before
Present. Councilman Ford. Councilwoman Johnson. Councilman Jones.
Here.
Councilwoman Logan.
Present.
Councilman Morgan.
Here.
Councilwoman Robinson. Councilman Smiley.
I'm here.
Councilwoman Swearingen. And Chair Warren.
Present. First, today I'd like to hear item 2 on our agenda, which is an update on our group violence intervention program. This is all council districts, and it was requested by Councilman Carlisle. Chief, can you please go ahead and present the role? I think you have Ms. Collins who's going to be presenting. Is that correct? Want to introduce your?
Can I say something real quick?
Excuse me. Yes. Before I let you go, Chief, Councilman Carlisle needs to say something.
Desperately. Desperately. Again, this falls into the same thing. We appropriated roughly $2 million, and then we've laid out a capital outlay out of the general operating budget for this year. And then for the coming years, and much like, and I told Chief McGowan, it's just making sure that we're keeping up with where these new programs and projects are going, especially since we've got multi-million-dollar initiatives. And again, not to get lost in the conversation of it's not just police officers, it's intervention. So just wanted to keep following up on this stuff. And again, Doc, I appreciate you.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Chief McGowan, state your name and address, and please begin your presentation.
Thanks, Doug McGowan, 347 Stonewall, Chief Operating Officer, joined by Director of Strategic Initiatives here, Tiffany Collins. But she's going to do the bulk of the presentation, but I wanted to comment on what Councilman Carlisle just mentioned. A concept is a concept until we put some funding behind it where we can begin taking action. So we thank you to you, Councilman, for bringing us the Bleeding Out book. And it took us some time to get everybody on board with the idea of what's this other thing we're talking about with group violence. I think we had a lot of discussions during the city council, during the budget presentation. We all came together and said, we're going to push the I believe button, that there's more we can do. And you all passed a budget that had some GVIP money in it. And so with that, we began the work. And the work does not start, I think Councilman Carlisle mentioned that, you don't just overnight have a car and you start driving it. You have to start putting the pieces together. And that's largely what we've been doing. A lot of hard work, a lot of training, a lot of hiring. And that's what Ms. Collins will talk a little bit about today. But we're thankful for you all to put the faith and the confidence in the administration and the program, and to put some money behind this so that we can get going. So with that, I'll turn over to Ms. Collins.
Good afternoon. Tiffany Collins, Director of Strategic Initiatives for the City of Memphis. I hope you all have the PowerPoint in front of you, but I will go ahead and get started. First thing I want to talk about is just to give you a brief update on what group violence intervention is. It is a methodology that we as the city have decided to make it a 3-pronged solution to help us as another tool in our toolbox to mitigate our ongoing gun violence in our community. With that being said, it's a program that we've had to look for various technical partners across the country to give us the best practices. We are not the first people in the country to do this, so we have sought out the experts. We've had conversations. We decided some experts weren't the best fit for Memphis. We've talked to the Crime Commission, hospitals, the trauma centers, and how can we holistically reduce violence in our city. Our current staff exists of the Focus Deterrence Coordinator, the Data Policy and Community Engagement Coordinator, and an Intervention Coordinator. Our partners are LeBonner, Regional 1, the National Network of Safe Communities, David Kennedy's program, LISC, which is the Local Initiatives for Communities for Support. They're helping us with wraparound services. 901 Block Squad, and HAVI, which is the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention. They'll be our technical partner for Regional 1 and LeBonner. We've been working with those groups since July to form what kind of program fits Memphis. And it's been a very interesting development, and you can take the next slide. Thank you. To date, we've had the Urban Peace Institute here. They've worked with our street intervention team to train them and show them the best practices that have been used across the country. We hired those 3 GVIP staff members, of course, and we had a training with the National Network of Safe Communities. They hosted what they call GVIP University to give us a full in-depth understanding of what it means to have a GVIP program. We have a weekly review of incidents that we consider to have a high retaliation factor, and we engage with several partners to see how we can get in front of those individuals before they make a bad decision. And of course, we've expanded the 901 Block Squad. Initially, they only had 12 members. They currently have 25. And so those are things that we've been doing. Doesn't sound as much, but when you have to pull in partners and benchmark, it's intense. And our future plans include, I have a really good assistant, by the way. In December this month, we are going to launch our programs at Regional 1 and Le Bonheur. The Regional 1 program will be staffed by individuals that we hire here. Le Bonheur is actually hiring individuals internally to manage their program. We're going to expand our 901 Block Squad street intervention team from 25 to 50. And we're actually going to hire a GVIB administrator. No, you're looking what you're here. I have other projects. Our gun violence problem it's important. We need someone who thinks about this all day, every day. Their time is not split. Preferably, we're looking for someone who has intensive experience in this space. In January of 2022, we're going to start what we call a problem analysis training. That is a program that takes us about 30-day lead time to help us start looking at the groups and individuals that are most problematic in our community so we can start a more tactical approach to changing their behaviors. We're identifying and working with partner organizations. We understand that part of it is talking to someone, trying to get them not to make a bad choice. But the next thing is talking to them and saying, okay, now that what got you here? What do you need? Do you need to go back to school? Do you need a GED? Do you need a driver's license? Do you need drug rehab? Do you need shelter? So some of those wraparound services we need to start connecting people to because there's reasons why people turn to crime and gun violence, and we need to see how we can help them get on the right track. And also with our outreach program, and we've kind of had these conversations, but we want to be able to partner with neighborhood watch programs. MPD alone can't do this, and we can't wait for people to come to us and say, I want to start a neighborhood watch program. We need to be able to go to those people and say, let us help you. Connect those with those tools to keep their own community safe. From there, I'll stop and I'll take some questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Thank you for the presentation. I guess the thing that I'm most interested in is how to have you explain to people how we're connecting the dots between the Block 901 squad, the focused deterrence from the district attorney, what we've got with our police department, with our gang unit that's intermeshed with the sheriff's department, and alcohol and firearms and et cetera. So everyone can understand that what we're actually doing is building a network here that's going to be very focused on violent gun crime.
So that problem analysis, our MPD partners it's a very intense process. It is the first step you take. And it's not something they get to do overnight. So they have to do that research and study. And that's where National Networks comes back in and say, based on the information that you all gave us, based on your history of the last 6 months or last year, here's the best course of action for you. You did mention the district attorney. That framework and those conversations are things that we're all having to, because they have a program that they manage. So we want to make sure that we don't overlap their program, but we're using our resources to address our direct issues. But in the long run, that will be part of the program. But we have to look at MPD's resources and things of that nature to make sure that we are not taken away from what they have to do to manage the department from a day-to-day basis.
I would just add to that, what you described, Councilman, is the direction we're going. So building that network of everybody doing complementary work, that's why we're hiring full-time staff. It is a precise work that obviously there are some delicate things that need to be handled in a way that we don't, belie trust or belay trust with people who are working in the field in sensitive areas. And so, but that is exactly what we're building. That's why we have the GVIP team in the city to be the orchestra director of all of those activities to make sure they're complementary, not duplicative. And I do want to come back to what Tiffany said. These weekly meetings where we discuss what happened, that is kind of the normal course of work that we'll be doing, because it really does help to inform those areas where you come all the way back to what could happen next and who's most appropriate to take action there. And I'll also mention with the hospital programs launching this month, that is what happens when we didn't get it right and somebody ends up in a trauma unit and their family's in the waiting room. And so we don't want to let that event go unnoticed without having engaged in those folks, because we know that there's likely to be an event that occurs there. So that work is happening. It's not as broad as it should be today, but it will be once we get the network together. But what you described is exactly the purpose of the GVIP office, to harmonize those efforts together.
I think this is sort of what our citizens are trying to, they're wondering, all of us have had people come and tell us, we've got to do something about violent crime. And I guess what I'm trying to get out into the public domain is this is what we're doing. We're building this. We're very far along with it. We're starting to see some initial progress, but we're not where we need to be yet. So on a time frame type situation, when do you think you're going to have this up and operational with cooperation interdepartmentally and interagency-wise?
From where we are today with contracting and research, I think we're about 6 months out, realistically.
And are we actually seeing interventions occur now and arrests occur now? And perhaps there would be some way that we could get a report to the council about what's happening as we move forward, so we can get the benchmark and we can see where we're moving based on our current benchmarks.
So I think the first thing that's to be mindful is the intervention work is highly sensitive. And those individuals are successful in that space because we keep a polite barrier between what they do and what we do. We have been able to take that information and see how it would work, but we're still working on that. At some point we will be able to take that information in the most sensitive fashion and see how it's working for us.
Explain a little bit exactly what that means for people listening at home, because I don't think everybody understands what you're talking about, the sensitive nature of the people who are doing this work.
Let me give an example. So I don't mean, and what Ms. Collins doesn't mean is that people are just sitting, training and waiting. So let me use the 911 block squad. They're out there every day. I talked with one of their members today who said he's on the scene of something and trying to determine, okay, what might happen next. They're doing that each and every day. The system we're trying to build with GVIP is, so how does that individual, if he determines there's something about to happen next, he has a role to play in preventing a retaliation. But he also knows there's other people that need services. And so who does he hand them off to? That's the system we're building, is how do I hand them off to the next most logical person? I don't want to give a very specific example here, but if you name an aggravated assault or a shooting that happened here, I just want everybody to understand that the street intervention team is on the case in and around there trying to figure out what either A, caused that or what's about to happen next, so that they can go talk to the group that might be interested in doing something in either retaliation and saying, let's keep a calm head. You're not going to see them on the news. You're not going to see them doing a press briefing. But they are a part of our process, and they filter information through our team so that we know, hey, there are things happening, and you all should know that there are things happening, but here's what we're doing. So what I can commit to you, Dr. Warren, is we will come back with some examples. We will genericize them so that we can give you a concrete example of what's happening. The hospitals will be able to do the same thing. They will be able to tell us once the HAVI program is launched this month, here is a person who landed in our facility. Here is the circumstances around how he got here, and here are the circumstances of the people that he's associated with, and why we might need to take some action to reach out to them with a different group of people to prevent something else from happening. That kind of coordination is a network that doesn't very often involve MPD or the sheriff's office. It's many times social service agencies, schools, community leaders to try to keep things calm. So we can come back with a networked example that's generic to show you the complexity and nuance of this work. But when she says June, I think we'll have the treadmill on 10 and running by then. That doesn't mean we're not on the treadmill now and trying to do some work along the way.
I think it's important for people to understand that the vast majority of this work is going to be that community intervention, and intervention to prevent the next violent act by providing services. So I think that that's what I was wanting as far as some sort of benchmark data that you can say this is how much of our resources are going into services, this is what's going into our crime prevention program, this is going into the gang prevention unit, and so people will have a better idea. I think we have some questions now. Councilwoman Logan.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Collins and Mr. McGowan, Chief McGowan. I wanted to ask about this overview. It's been my experience that we have people on the ground actually doing the work in our city that's making a difference in their sphere. And then we'll have a big team come in of studies and national this and that. And we try to mirror the work that they're doing, or go and start something that they're already doing. There are a number of organizations that are on the ground doing this work. And what are we doing to make certain that we're not getting in the way of the work being done by the red tape or bureaucracy, or starting up this group or starting another nonprofit to spread it out, but not actually supporting the groups that are on the ground, that are doing the work, that understand these organizations or the people that are committing the crime? Because we've had a lot of intervention or groups or commissions or organizations, and the crime is escalating. And so, but there are organizations who are making a difference where they are. Are we connecting those? I noticed that there's just one here, and I want to make sure that they're informing your actions, because if they're informing your actions, it shouldn't be a lot of, if this is the organization that you've chosen based on your study of this group and their results, it shouldn't be a lot of contemplation or study based on some national model if we're trying to fix it here with the groups that are working here on the ground. So if you could kind of speak to how you came up with this and how are you allowing them to inform your process moving forward?
Referencing 901 Block?
901 Block Squad, because
Okay.
I'm assuming that's the group that you chose to kind of inform this intervention.
So when we say inform our process, I would say that our process is more so informed by National Networks of Safe Community. That's the book that Councilman Warren was referencing that he read. Our process is, they are a vendor of ours. They are a part of our team. They're like an extension of employees. But our process and how we choose to operate, it is not dictated by them. No, ma'am. We are looking at the process and model that was used in other cities across the country, Detroit, Minnesota, Chicago. That's where we're looking to find out what is the best course of action for us. We're not looking for 901 Block to dictate our actions. No, ma'am.
Okay, well, I guess like you're using Detroit and different models, and that's good for information to help bring perspective. But in Memphis, what's going on in Memphis, on the streets of Memphis and in schools and in the neighborhoods, the people that are in Memphis know what's going on, and who better to ask? So, And when you say they've gone from 12 to 25, I'm just wondering, out of all of these partnerships, they're the only ones that are in Memphis on the ground. So I just, wanted to get more
Councilwoman Logan,
feedback on that.
Are you asking, are there plans to include other groups to increase our complement on the ground that are already doing some of the work? How are we bringing in local groups that are already doing the work into this process?
Or how we're allowing them to inform some of the methodology or to get some of the results that are Memphis-based. And I'm not knocking your approach. I'm just trying to understand it if we want to see results based on what's happening here in our city.
So 2 things. We haven't had any conversations about other organizations. I mean, at this point, we're really trying to get this up and standing up so we can be as impactful. And I don't think that that's a conversation that is never going to happen, but we just haven't approached it. As it relates to, I mentioned those other entities because I'm speaking from them as a sense of how do we capture that data? What are our data points? And how do we pull the information we get from them, and how do we put it in a formula where we can use it? So not so much of Memphis on the ground. It is our partners will work with us in the capacity that we tell them to. But this is not we don't want to have an ad hoc GVO program. We want to have a stellar program. So we want the best practices, and we want to take them and put them in a bowl and get out the best program for Memphis. I completely agree with you.
So with the funds that you have, are those just like administrative funds to get it started, but we're not gonna really see any on the ground work? And then you come back and say phase 2 is, okay, now we're ready to deploy teams or something like that because we've had to do the groundwork and set the program up.
Like adding 12 full-time interventionists to get from 12 to 25 or 13, and then we just authorize them to go up to 50. That's actual money for actual people on the ground. And the hospital teams, we're paying for that. That's actually 8 more people that are full-time doing this intervention work, but at the hospital. So most of the money is going to deploy people on the street. Now, if you're speaking, like you'll recall all the way back when we talked about this, there is room enough for everybody, and we have to coordinate. So I'm going to use some names of people that I know from my history. And just to be clear, Block Squad's been in Memphis and doing this work since 2012. So these guys are Memphians and been here for a long time. But, there's guys like Charlie Caswell up at Rangeline CDC who does some work in this space. They talk with our team, and they have a group meeting. Stevie Moore with Freedom from Unnecessary Negatives is a part of this work, and Stevie does great work, and he has his room to maneuver in the space, and it's coordinated and complementary with what we're doing. So we hear from those folks. I'm just using those 2 guys as an example because I think a lot of people know who they are, but they have an area of town where they are very effective and they know what's happening on the ground, but sharing that information and also working together with them on solutions is part of what we do. And so there is room for those existing organizations to be a part of this and share information and collaboration. Now, I will say that you'll understand and you'll hear that the health department had already engaged with a group called Cure Violence. They brought another individual to town, which is also looking to do this. So we brought them into the fold and asked them to help coordinate with our group to find out, okay, what is it that you would like to achieve in what area of town? And what are the groups on the ground that you would like to coordinate with? So some of this is coordination with what's happening on the ground, and there is plenty of room and opportunity for people doing the work to be a part of it. It's not going to supersede what other people are doing.
I yield back. Thank you for that
You're very welcome.
information. I'll come back. So,
I think that was a very important point. Thanks for bringing it out, Councilwoman Logan. Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you. I commend any organizational group that's trying to address violence. So I just wanted to make sure we're working together. Listening to the conversation, it became a little bit more clearer, the approach that you were actually using, how you were intervening. But my question still is, how is you working with the Memphis Police Department? I mean, it seems like it's still a big separation between the two from what I'm hearing.
I think there is not, to the degree in which you might think. as an organization, as a department, we had to get to the point where we had the tools to come to MPD and say, can you help us with this? And we have just gotten to that point where we can say, okay, this is where we need MPD to plug in, and they have been a great partner with us. That's going to be a longer process and just, hiring people and putting them in the hospitals. But MPD has been engaged with us and been supportive in this process.
Okay, I just asked the question because a lot of things just not clear, and the more you talk about it, it becomes clearer. Like she talking about the support agencies that's already on the ground. You can't disregard what people been doing all along, and I know a lot of this is probably shouldn't be known because once you lay everything out on the table, that's where crime finds out about everything. So I understand it to a certain extent, but as long as you're working together and we don't bump heads one day over a serious issue. But I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for this update? I would like, hopefully, maybe we can come back in 3 months or so and get another update about where we are, integration of other groups, and perhaps a report from the police department also about where they think they're headed, just for our community to understand again a little bit more.
I think we committed to quarterly updates, Councilman, so we'll come back to you quarterly with a report on how things are going.
Thank you very much. That being no questions, I guess the second item is Councilman Smiley here. Okay. If he's not here, I think Councilman Jones had a couple tapes he wanted to play or things he.
That's furthest.
Okay, so, Councilman Smiley, there you are. You had a group you wanted to present for us today?
Absolutely.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes for the presentation. Can you get your presenter to come up and give their name and address for the record?
Chairman, may I?
Yes, please go ahead, Councilman.
Okay. The city of Memphis has experienced a significant uptick in crime. I think we've last year we set records, and I believe this year we're on pace to do the same thing. And one of the things that I wanted to do is, give folks in the community who believe they have a plan to reduce crime to present before this body. I think we've been attempting to address crime for all of my life, and what we don't do enough of is bring folks in the community, give them opportunity to present a plan of action. And one thing I'm committed to do is listen to everybody. I think we always have to have open minds and open hearts to receive information that doesn't necessarily come from us, but we're all elected to represent the people. So the people have a plan. Let's listen. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to the Memphis Artists for Change.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Tamika Greer. Address 1540 Netherwood Avenue, grade 106. I'm the executive director of Memphis Artists for Change. We have a presentation of PowerPoint that should be loading. As it's loading, I'll tell you all about the program for time's sake. One of our actual flagship programs is our Love Now program, which is the acronym for Life of Violence Ends Now. So we've actually been working on this program since 2019, working with a couple of national partners. To your point, Ms. Logan, is actually to deal with what's happening here and try and use what's working nationally to tweak what we already know from here. So taking our own. Thank you. So taking our own data and making sure that we're applying what we may see working in other areas nationally, but applying it in a way that it actually speaks to what's going on in our cities. So our Love Now program is a four-part program, four-pronged program. So it deals with supportive services. Is that me? Yeah, I will.
Not me.
Mic check? Okay. Y'all ready? Okay. Y'all remember the Flintstones character Slap Rock? When he come around builds, I tell people I'm Slap Rock, so things. I want me to try again? I think we're good. You can actually put, if you want the PowerPoint to go on. So if I don't get any static, I'll preface that while that goes on. We initially had over 500 conversations with constituents within Memphis and Shelby County to really talk about violence and violence reduction from the standpoint of the community. Like, what does the community think the answer is to try and, deal with some of the issues? And as we dug deep, what we found was that they needed more. They spoke about more supportive services, more community-based programming outside of after-school services. So things actually in the community on weekends and at additional times to serve not just the young people, but their families. So a lot of our programming really addresses the ecosystem of those who are served. It is community-based, meaning we're directly inside the neighborhoods. Our current target neighborhood in South Memphis is Whitehaven. We've been working inside the Pepper Tree Apartments, the apartments formerly known as the Bent Tree Apartments, and really in a 10 by 10 block area to deal with a lot of the issues that were brought up in those conversations. So providing supportive services, providing conflict resolution, as you see on the PowerPoint, trauma informed. Try to mitigate some of the things that happen in the holidays. We know that violence and violent actions occur higher in during the holiday period. So even though we're talking about specifically gun violence, we're addressing violence and the attitudes that actually come with it, as well as some of the things like that poverty brings about. So we have to go and talk to people about if they need coats. Let's provide them coats before we talk about why y'all fighting, right? Oh.
Hello. Just to clarify, it's a trauma and race-informed conflict resolution training, because it's also very important that we're including trauma and race within trainings that we do with people, because that does is a factor.
Some of our partners who we've been working with locally, C3, Abyssinia Baptist Church. So again, we provide what we call houses and spaces of refuge, right? So that's churches, but also places within the community that will serve as places of mediation, places of respite. If it's something going on in the hood and somebody needs to get out the hood to mediate a situation, so we'll take them to one of those houses or spaces of refuge in another area. Our Art House Cafe, which is in the Soulsville area, will serve as a house or space of refuge. And to talk about how our supportive services kind of overlap, our Art House Cafe is a perfect example of that, because 38126, we all know the disparities in that community, right? One issue is that it also has very poor internet access. So we provide a Wi-Fi cafe in that space, so we can also have community members comfortable with coming to that space as a space of refuge. In that space, we'll provide conflict mediation. What we hope to do is pivot down. So these are the services we've been providing.
we need to pivot into full-time staff people on the ground. Right now, we have all of our staff who work in our Love Now program are volunteer, with the exception of our paid staff who are actually in other programs, just kind of pivoting, providing whatever services could be provided at this time. We sent you all invitations in October to a community conversation so you could hear some of the responses from the community members themselves, but you all had a special committee meeting that you called, so you weren't able to attend. But again, our supportive services, with working with our partners nationally, what we found is that a fully funded program is upward of $3 million, right, for a 10 by 10 block. We scaled the program down to 1.7 for a fully funded program of 17 staff members, and we were able to scale it down because there was a lot of duplication of services. So there are places like the American Job Center that already offers some of that in-depth job training and things that we will be trying to perform. So our supportive services really could go towards mental health care, paying for mental health care, paying for child care expenses, transportation assistance. And these are the things we've been doing with funding that we've received so far. Some of our national partners who have provided us funding are the Live Free, Fund Peace, as well as Faith in Action, strictly for this Love Now program. So what we're hoping is that, again, initially when we sent the invitation, we were going to ask for ARPA dollars that were remaining to be invested into this program. We have an ask to Shelby County Mayor. We've had a meeting with him. We have a follow-up meeting with him in the coming weeks. So we're asking now the city to support this community-based programming. And it is completely community-based. It is designed in a way that allows us to pivot and open up the opportunity to partner with other organizations in this work. But this pivot can't take place without the collection of real data. So those partners have to also have the ability to help us collect data, because what we've been doing now, up until this moment, has been stopgap. So now it's data collection. There is national data for places that this has worked, but there is no one place that said this is the one program that needs to go everywhere. So everybody's really just trying things and hoping it works in the wind, right? Well, we've taken our evidence-based programs, tweaked them for the work we're doing here locally, and then hoping to create and gather the data to then come back and say, hey, this is what works in this area. How can we pivot it to another area in Memphis and also tweak it to that area? Because Whitehaven ain't Frazier, and we have to stop operating in the sense that those areas operate the same, or even that those who are involved in violence move in the same way based on the neighborhoods that they live in. Amber.
So I just wanted to specifically talk about the Houses of Refuge and the program that we have been doing. So the key thing that's different from Memphis Artists for Change and other organizations is that we've already been doing this work. Memphis Artists for Change is not a new organization, and the Love Now programming isn't new either. We have been doing more in-depth programming in the last year, but this is a program we've already been doing that has worked. And also, we actually are listening to community members and what they're asking and what they're saying they need as resources to help them to actually alleviate violence. And it's not more policing. It's how do I feed my kids? I don't have a way to pick them up from school. I don't know how to handle conflict because no one taught me how to handle conflict. I'm traumatized at my house because of the way my mom treats me because she doesn't know how to handle conflict either. How do I alleviate that? What does that conversation look like? So providing them spaces, therapy, art therapy. Black people specifically do not go to therapy, and they don't use therapy in the same way that other people do. So providing them the actual resources that they need, not just a one-stop plan that everyone is saying this should work for everyone, because it doesn't.
Group violence intervention plan. So I'm pretty sure that you'll probably be hearing from administration as they continue to build this plan to see where you fit in it and how maybe funds can be coming your way from that source. So that's what I expect to see as they move this program forward. It's going to be groups like yours on the ground that are incorporated into sort of a holistic program for the whole city. And I realize you are completely right. What works in Whitehaven may not work may not work up in Frazier, and we're going to have to tailor it for each community, which is why one size won't fit all in Memphis with what we're doing. Councilman Smiley, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess posed a question to Chief Davis after hearing some of the presentation from the Memphis Artists for Change and hearing the presentation about group violence intervention program, and I asked Chief Davis to come just say a few words about the differences between the programs and whether one program is slightly more in depth. And I think she has a perspective I think this body may want to listen to.
Thank you for your presentation. Just looking at the presentation, I think this is probably the type of program that is another layer for group violence intervention. Group violence intervention might be a layer up. This is more proactive and addresses some of the root causes in the community that we talk about quite often. And we wish there didn't have to be so many police officers if we had more programs that dealt with the root causes of the various issues in our community. Some of the conflict resolutions we see over and over again, gun violence, because individuals don't know how to resolve conflict without using weapons and other modes of violence. So I don't see where they intersect in a sense. I think they could work well together, especially from a proactive and preventive standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief Davis.
Councilman.
Thank you. I'm looking at your budget. Who have you had to help you? I know you mentioned the county side. Can you explain? Can you tell me your funds?
I got you.
What fund?
I'm trying. I think I'm the problem. Live Free has actually committed $120,000 to this program. Faith in Action has committed $45,000. Not committed, has already granted us $45,000. Live Free has granted us 50 of the $120,000, but they are committed for entire $120,000. Faith in Action is granting us a multi-year grant, and we haven't got the final numbers on it. But so the first drop in that grant was $45,000.
What about the county?
We have asked the county for $100,000.
Okay. What are you asking the city for?
We would love for the city to match that $100,000.
I'm looking at supportive services, $475, premises and program costs, $279.5, staff and benefits, $889. So we need to add those totals up. That's what you need.
1.6.
Okay.
Look it out for you. 2 seconds. I told you I was slipping right with the jury.
Okay.
It is a total of $1,643,519.
Good enough. Okay. All right.
With anything. That's 17 staff. That's 17 staff people as well.
Okay. Now I know you mentioned church. Is that Greater Abyssinia on Mill Branch?
It's just Abyssinia, but it's getting greater. So yeah, it's on Mill Branch. I think it's
it's Abyssinia because it was a break. Yeah, good. So it's just Abyssinia. That's why I'm trying to make sure that's the church.
Yes, it
that's
is.
on Mill Branch.
Yes, 3890 Mill Branch Road.
Yep, know where it is. Yeah, Greater Abyssinia was over there in Bunker Hill. They kind of broke off. Okay, and that's Abyssinia.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. I'm good with that. Yeah, I just need to know those figures. Everything else. Thank you very much.
And Riverside,
Thank you, Councilman.
I was going to say Riverside Baptist Church in Westwood has also committed to a space of refuge too.
Yeah. Well, it ain't really Riverside and Westwood. Everybody wants to say it's Westwood. That's Mo Walker Homes. But great churches, and hey, yeah. So hey, you can be represented. So hey, yeah, we'll work on that. Okay. I just needed them figures because I know you. Yep, I know y'all can do a very good job, and we need all the help that we can. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Logan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder if we are taking a holistic approach to how we are attacking. I love this, and I agree that it is it works parallel to the other program. But in terms of what the crime that's happening, looking at it from what they're doing from that side, is this how many people will this program help? Can you export the program to another area and then look at it with the same amount of funds, or will you need the same at 1.6 for another section of the city? How does that play out? But that's my question to you. But my question to the body is, are we looking at how we're approaching it in a holistic way, or are we just really so concerned about it that we're just kind of grabbing at for straws? But what can we do to make certain that we are doing legislation as well as funding this effort in a holistic approach, or a way that can bring resolve across the city? Because what's happening in like you said, in the Raleigh or the Cordova, and then in the Whitehaven or the other areas in Hickory Hill, they're all, pretty different. And the way, but they all intersect at the crime that's happening, because the crimes are similar, but the way they're getting to them is different. You have some that's middle class having the same issues that those in poverty. So the approach is different. But if you leave out a whole sector of what's happening, you're still going to have that crime, regardless of how you help one part of the city. And so I would hope that this would be included, that, it's inclusive of the solution, but it's not the solution in totality. So if we're going to be funding, I would say let's look at some other aspects, because I'm sure the police department, as they were doing community policing early on and was seeing gains in that. And then this, the people that are on the ground, such as yourself. And then there are other voices that I think we're missing because we don't know how to approach it. And so your book, it was a great model, or a great tool to say, hey, here's somebody that has looked at how to approach it. But in Memphis, that's something that we're going to have to do. And from the group intervention that we're doing, I don't know that they are looking at it from a holistic approach.
I do think that was the point I was trying to get across, is they're building this process now. And although, as Chief said, some of the part of the programs that you guys are using right now may not be in the group violence intervention program, that part where you're taking someone who's in a position that needs to be put in a safe space and moved and housed, that is definitely part of that group violence intervention program, where they're identified by people. So as you see this, I think the holistic component that we're trying to do is to build it. So part of what we're doing is we've got a bunch of different groups working in different parts of town, and you can't snap your finger and make them all work together in a minute, which is why they brought this model in to try to figure out, how do we coordinate this? What part's going to be police? What part's social work? How do they all work together to a common end? So I see where you're coming from, and the issues that we have is it's not going to happen overnight, but every time we get an additional piece of the puzzle that we can give to the group violence intervention program to incorporate in whatever way is appropriate, we're going to make a more holistic model. And it's going to be a Memphis model, because whatever they're doing, if it's not a Memphis model, it's not going to work. So that's why it's really important that that's why I wanted to hear from this group, from Councilman Smiley, because they're part of the puzzle.
Oh, of
if
course.
that makes any sense.
Yes, I'm glad we did hear from it. But in allocating funds, I just wanted us to be mindful of that, of how we're allocating funds. Not that we shouldn't, but knowing that there's going to be some funding that's going to be needed, additional funding along the way.
I think you're right. As we allocate these funds, we want to coordinate it through that group violence intervention program, so it's all coordinated. Yes, next up is Councilman Smiley. And after that, we'll go to item 3 if there are no more questions.
I think all the points well taken. Councilwoman Logan, appreciate your comments. Dr. Warren, appreciate your comments as well. Chief Davis, thank you for sharing with us as well. I think you already answered this question. I just want to be clear. What's the ask of this body?
That's $100,000.
$100,000. And what have you all done to secure additional funding? Because I see the cost of the program and it far exceeds
Again,
that.
what I just mentioned was we have received funding from the Live Free and a commitment of $120,000. They've given us $50,000 of that already. Faith in Action has agreed to multi-year funding. We haven't finalized the term, but we have received $45,000 of that already. We've asked the county for $100,000. And we've communicated with youth villages about some funding on the programming they have.
So the reason I asked those specific questions for the members of this body, a lot of times when we have organizations come before us, one of the very first questions that we ask is, what have you done to raise money to support your efforts? This organization has done just that. And I think it's very important. I'm going to talk about a couple other things. One, when we allocate funding, we always should be mindful of how we spend the city's dollars. But I would point to one particular program that comes to my mind when we talk about allocating funding. When we heard the Public Service Corp, we allocated funds that we haven't, I'm not sure if we've seen any metrics. Not one metric. Not one metric. And that specific allocation far exceeded what this organization is asking us. The other day I had a community prayer, and it was praying for healing for this community because, we all see the crime. The assassination of young Dolph happened less than 2 miles from my house. Couldn't go anywhere. And we all talk about reducing crime. And I think a lot of my colleagues on this body will agree that we need police. But police is not the sole fix to our problems. We need community members who have relationships with the folks we don't to play an active role in reducing crime. I say it a lot of times, churches won't do it alone. Police can't do it alone. Elected officials cannot do it alone. Nonprofits cannot do it alone. It takes all of us working collectively to solve the crime problem in this city. And, I find it puzzling when an organization tells us that we've already been doing the work. They say we house people right now. When folks have problems in our community, they come to us. They may call us a little bit. They may share a few things with us, but when it gets real, they call them. This organization is telling us we're doing the work. They're telling us that they already been doing these things. Chief Davis spoke specifically. She said, I think this is needed. This is a proactive approach. If we truly want to lower crime in this city, all hands on deck. All hands on deck. Not just talking about reducing crime, not just campaigning on reducing crime, not just putting more police officers on the street. And, for me, I think we need police. But we also need community members taking an active approach when an organization comes before us saying, hey, we're doing the work. It shouldn't be a question of, well, I'm concerned if we should fund them or not. Let's fund them. What are we talking about here? We have folks up here who, made pledges to do right by the folks, reduce crime, which is provide for the general welfare of his people. When we talk about providing for the general welfare of his people, the very first issue should be safety. So I'm gonna bring a resolution next week. Well, next council meeting, not this coming to council meeting. And it's gonna be to fund this $100,000. I'm not sure how it's gonna work. If safety is your priority, I hope you support it. Thank you.
Councilman, I would recommend that probably discuss this with the administration concerning group violence intervention, integration, and funding, and then bring that resolution to us.
I will have a conversation with the administration on that specific problem. Thank you.
Councilwoman Johnson.
I'm in agreement to support any agency that, addressing violence. But the problem is, some agencies that come before us, we're familiar with what that particular organization does and how effective they are in the community. This is my first time interacting with this particular group. So I would definitely want to see some metrics and some stats to say exactly what you are doing to justify supporting you. But if you're out there, I'm with you, but I definitely need to have some information.
We can make sure that all of you all get some information.
Okay.
Letting you know.
We'll have
the work
staff
we've been
follow up
doing.
with you on that.
Meredith?
Okay.
No pressure.
All right.
I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you for bringing this group to us, Councilman Smiley.
Thank you all
Colleagues,
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 is the referendum ordinance amending Article 27, Section 190 of the Charter of the City of Memphis, same being Chapter 11 of the Acts of 1879 as amended, and relative to amendments thereto pursuant to the provision of Article 2, Section 9 of the Constitution of the State of Tennessee, the Home Rule Amendment, to allow specified personnel employed within the divisions of police and fire services to reside within 50 miles from the city of Memphis, all council districts, sponsored by Councilwoman Morgan and Canale. Could I first have a motion and a second?
Move.
Love it. Second.
Okay. Before we open up the floor, I'd like to remind my colleagues that this is an ordinance. So we're going to have 3 readings on this. And I'd like the first reading to be at our next meeting on the 21st, so we can hear this item back in committee before the 21st meeting. And I want to give all members tonight an opportunity to speak, but I want to keep this limited. It's now 5:49, and this is an ordinance. We do not have to solve this tonight. But my idea is for us to use the time between readings to talk to our constituents and try to find a way to amend this ordinance in a way that works for all the communities, but also allows for us to hire more police officers. And also, I want to try to do this before the General Assembly forces our hand and just passes their own legislation of which we can't have any input. So I would like now, if I could, to give Councilman Morgan and then Councilman Canale, as the ordinance co-sponsors, the opportunity to open up discussion. We're going to have everyone speak once, and then I'm going to close the committee. So thank you. Councilman Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay.
He did?
Given Memphis's current circumstances, I feel duty-bound to reintroduce this residency referendum. It is before the state government. It has been delayed a year. It could be delayed again. It could be amended. Whatever action they choose to take or not take, I do not believe that absolves us of our responsibility to the people. Everything that you'd like to see from MPD requires them to have adequate personnel. The new Scorpion Task Force, if you're a fan of the work that they're doing, that requires personnel. The GVIP program that we heard tonight, and general investigative services, whether it be rape, whether it be homicide, whether it be domestic violence, community policing, which I believe we're all in favor of and expressed over the past few years, a desire and a need for us to return to that, all requires MPD to have adequate personnel. There are a couple of misconceptions from the last time we discussed this that I want to dispel from the outset. And first off, I want to say amen to Councilman Smiley. Well, I think one of the misconceptions is this is not being presented as a holistic solution to the problems that we're facing. This will not fix everything. We know that we need more conflict resolution amongst our young people. We don't want them to choose to pick up a gun or have access to that gun. We know that we need rehabilitation on the back end of crimes being committed and people being released back into society. And those are major, major components to a very complex issue of our crime problem in Memphis and the surrounding area. But one component of our crime issue that this does fix is being able to hold individuals accountable for the crimes that they are committing and making sure that one victim doesn't turn into 10, turn into 20 for the same perpetrator. Police don't simply respond to a scene take a report, and then go home at the end of the day. They have other duties and responsibilities. They're taking evidence, they're investigating these crimes, they're canvassing for witnesses. It is their responsibility to make a case that will lead to an indictment or arrest for that crime. They will then testify in court to that if necessary, that leads to prosecution. It is a much larger role for that officer than just responding after they get a 911 call. And if we don't have the correct number of officers, that inhibits their ability to investigate. It inhibits their ability to canvass. It inhibits their ability to do. Also, we're talking about those proactive events like community policing. And so all of a sudden, you've got an investigator who has cases piling up on their desk, and they have to basically look and see which ones are slam dunks and those they can address, and anything that's a layup or a short jump shot that maybe they could put down with a little bit more time, a little bit more work or effort. They just don't have the time to get to it because as they're investigating that, more and more cases are piling up. And this is certainly a problem that we see now in our police force. I think we're all convinced of the need to increase. We're concerned about how to do it. We're concerned, I think, Chairman, you said that we're each going to speak once, so I think I'll preemptively talk to some of these articles that have been passed out and I think videos that are coming. We're concerned about where people lay their heads at night as if that has an indication of where their heart is and how motivated they are to do the job. And I want to say to prejudge someone like that, to have a preconceived opinion that is not based on fact or experience is the very definition of prejudice, and it has no place in the city of Memphis recruiting process for any of our divisions. We had 3 horrific incidents this year that I hesitate to talk about that involved MPD officers, where one MPD officer was charged with murder. Another MPD officer is charged, I believe, with kidnapping and rape or something similar to that. And another MPD officer was driving at excessive speeds that resulted in the deaths of 2 people. These are all alleged incidents, to my knowledge. I know that at least 2 of those officers lived in the city of Memphis. One of them would have been a poster child for Best in Blue. African-American male, from Memphis, went to Rhodes College, continued to live in Memphis, and then allegedly committed murder. It would be ridiculous of us to hold that against other Rhodes graduates who would be applying for the Memphis Police Department. It would be ridiculous of us to hold that against other people applying for Memphis Police Department that are from the city of Memphis. And we know that. Of course, that's not how you run a hiring process. It doesn't make any sense. But then that same standard gets applied to other officers that live maybe out in the county or live just outside the city of Memphis. West Memphis and neighborhoods in North Mississippi are closer to the city of Memphis and more a part of our community, I would argue, than areas in the county, such as like Arlington and Collierville. They can get to work quicker. They shop. They eat at restaurants. They certainly get to the airport a lot faster. And so these are just arbitrary lines that are a map that we need to do away with in an effort to make sure that we are recruiting the best in blue. And another preconceived notion, and I'll move a little faster, is that this takes away seats from qualified Memphis applicants. We just saw a presentation that we were down 47% in applications. This will not take a seat away from a qualified Memphis applicant. We have plenty of seats available. We're having a tough time finding the people to fill them. Another misconception is that this will lower city revenue. Yes, these are tax dollars that we pay back in salaries to individuals that might not be living within the county, but we do not base our revenues on the number of people living in Memphis or Shelby County. It is based on property taxes, which are the number of lots that are in Memphis and Shelby County, residential, commercial, industrial, and those stay the same whether this policy is in place or not. Now, you might try to argue that we want more people to live here. That's good for supply and demand, and that would increase the value of property in Memphis. The size of people that we're talking about in terms of hiring will not move demand, but what will move demand and wanting people to live in Memphis is having a safer community that they can call home, that they can go to the grocery store and gas station and not have to keep their head on a swivel. It is well past time that every level of government, including this council, enact the policies and commit the resources to address this violent crime epidemic in Memphis. This costs $0 and expands our recruiting pool by 35 to 40%. There are other efforts that we will have to make, as Councilman Smiley, that will have a dollar number, and we will have to judge what is the best and highest use of those dollars in order to achieve the goal that we want, which is a safer public. This costs us nothing. It is a change in policy. It is the right decision to make, and I think the people have the right to self-governance. They have the right to determine how they wish to be governed. And this isn't even us deciding it for the people. This is putting the question to them. And I trust that they will make the right decision, and so will we. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, I think was Councilman Jones had comments and presentations. And I'd like to remind us, let's try to keep this at 5 minutes apiece.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Michael Hodingsfield is the current director of police for the University of Texas system. But for 8 years, he served as the president of the Memphis Crime Commission. It was during that time that he provided remarks addressing crime in Memphis, and it was at that time he stated that most crimes in Memphis are domestic related, involving gangs, involving drugs. And in most instances, the victim and perpetrator, they know one another. He also stated that the average person doesn't have a greater risk of being a victim in crime than they would in any other large city in the United States. Mr. Hodingsfield left the Crime Commission in 2008, but from the indicators that's been reported since I've been on the council, those stats involving people knowing one another, domestic relations, drugs, crimes are still the majority of the crimes here in Memphis. So one of the articles that you have, colleagues, is as recently as September 17th. Most Memphis murders are not random. They're the result of arguments. Quoted in this article is Lieutenant Tony Mullins. Mullins said that when it comes to murders in Memphis, not much has changed. Random murders are rare. Mullins says most victims know the murderer in one way or another. Domestics, gang activity, drug activity, robberies, these things don't really change. Homicide is a crime of passion most of the time. And we do have homicides that happen randomly, like robbery or burglary, but most of the time it's people that know one another. No one can push your buttons like the people that know you. He goes on to say that Memphis's clearance rate is sitting at 65%, which is still slightly higher than the national average. So with that national average, colleagues, we have circumstances where what was talked about earlier is that the labor shortage is a labor shortage addressing us all over the country. So all over the country, you have places that have residency requirement. You have places that do not have residency requirement. But what you still face the challenge of being in a tough labor pool. So the mere fact of opening up residency is not going to drive crime down. Memphis has been fortunate in that we haven't had a high number of high-profile officer-involved shootings. But in an article that I've shared in here, it says that we've averaged 1.25 per million in police settlements. If we look at officer-involved shootings nationally and locally, we see the number of shootings, yet the number of indictments for those shootings is low. If there are indictments and charges, the number of convictions is low. And if there is a conviction, the chances of having a meaningful sentence is lower. So if you could put up the video, please, the Fox 13. Mr. Morgan wasn't 5 minutes. But Ms. Morgan wasn't 5 minutes.
I gave him a little leeway since and I'll give you a little leeway since you're playing this. but we're going to try to keep it to
For
5 minutes.
8 minutes of this 15-minute long police dash.
Part of that shocking dash cam video in Hernando. But how did it all start? Fox 13's Jeremy Pierre continues our team coverage tonight with a breakdown of this video.
For 8 minutes of this 15-minute long police dash cam video, you see an intense police pursuit involving Hernando police and Adrian Hoyle. Hoyle is the man behind the wheel of the blue Chevrolet car, weaving through traffic. This dangerous pursuit in September of last year caused cars on both sides of the two-lane highway to move out of the way. Once police managed to stop Hoyle's car at the 8-minute mark, Hoyle opens his door with his hands up. Even with his hands up, a police K-9 assists in his takedown. The K-9 bites are followed up with several punches from Hernando police officers. After the first punch from one officer, Hoyle is seen swinging back. Hoyle's lawyers say police initially went after Hoyle over suspicion of him running a traffic light. Now, according to the lawyers representing Hoyle, they say a supervisor told the officers in the pursuit to terminate the pursuit. That didn't happen. Officers didn't face any disciplinary action, and now the FBI is investigating. In Hernando, Mississippi, Jeremy Pierre, Fox 13 News.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I am not passing judgment on anybody. And, you know, something that was talked about was experience. And so being a black man in Memphis, or being a black young man when I was a teenager, driving by the Mall of Memphis, I may have said this, all of you all may not have been here, 16, 17 years old. I pulled over. We had a Z28 Camaro at the time. Nice car, teenager driving it. I see all these cars pulling out where the movie theater was at the Mall of Memphis. I see all these blue lights. Oh, they're about to get somebody. They were coming after me. So the lack of privilege said to me, there was a 357. This is when they carried revolvers back then. 357 pulled in my face as a young man. So that's my experience. And so I'm not painting a broad brush with anybody. But that's a settlement like that. Memphis taxpayers have to pay that. So from the standpoint, we live in the South. I don't have that privilege of not being judged by the color of my skin. And luckily, my son is just 8 years old. But that's a burden that he's gonna gonna live with. We live in the South. I'm not painting the brush to look at what has happened in history in this area. If we go 50 miles outside of Memphis, we don't even have to go that far. In some areas around here, it is not safe for a black man. And I don't want that mentality to be broadly in here. Are there bad apples already? Yes, there are. And so for us, until there is an end to qualified immunity to where an officer is subject to something like that, and it's going to impact their family, I'm not going to support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Let's see, Councilman Carlisle.
Councilman Jones, I apologize for your experience as a black man. I don't know that experience, and I certainly would never attempt to even speak to that. But very respectfully, I have no idea what that has to do with where an officer lives. Like, full stop. If I'm a black police officer from Chicago, Illinois, and my wife wants to take a job in DeSoto County to be at the DeSoto County Hospital, and I want to live there because I want to go to the DeSoto County schools, I have no idea what anything we just saw has to do where I want to live. At all. Everything that we just talked about has nothing to do where our officer lives, period. It's training, right, Chief Davis? Training is a singular correlation between a good cop and a bad cop. The hiring and recruiting process, vetting them, and their training. As a matter of fact, the last time we went through this entire thing, no one, and you still have yet to produce, a single data point in the entire United States and America that says residency correlates with police brutality. As a matter of fact, I was the only one that brought anything, any data point or study, which was from a group out of St. Paul, Minneapolis, Citizens Against Police Brutality, after 10 years of study said, we can find no discernible data point that residency correlates with how effective a police officer is. As a matter of fact, they found that groups that had relaxed residency requirements had more diverse staff than groups that didn't. I don't actually anticipate changing a single person's vote on this body, and to be frankly honest, I don't really care, because it's not up to me to decide where someone lives under our charter and our Tennessee State Constitution. I'm putting this to the people who want to vote and decide where their officers want to live. And then the argument was, well, not everybody gets to vote. Well, here's the deal. They don't get to be the voters that put you in office, and then all of a sudden their vote doesn't count as much as those who don't have the opportunity to vote. You don't get to have it both ways. So I plan to spend every week that we talk about this holding people accountable for bad faith arguments and just calling it like I see it. I will throw bombs for the rest of the time we talk about this, and then going forward. After 2 years, I'm so sick and tired of bad faith arguments, people saying one thing one week and changing course the next week just because it suits them, and then they run and hide. Those days are over for me. I don't really care how it impacts my relationships, because like you, I answer to the voters and the people who put me in office, and I'm just done with it. That I yield back.
I don't see anybody else that's here, so I'd just like to close with the comment of Councilman Johnson.
Okay, I have a couple questions. One is for clarity. Please, I understand somewhat, but how is this issue back before us after we made an initial vote on this? So can you just help me understand the process so I know what to do in the future when I want to bring something back up?
Yes, ma'am. 6 months. 6 months is expired.
Oh, okay, it's just a 6-month period, okay.
One of my legislative heroes was a guy by the name of William Wilberforce, who spent 2 decades bringing up the same issue every year until it was passed. And so I think whether my colleagues vote yes or no, it doesn't relieve me of my obligation and duty to the people.
Okay, excuse me. So thank you, Councilwoman. Another question?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thank you for that explanation, and it makes sense. I've known several situations like that when we talk about lobby. I mean, what is it, the bid and the money you spend? Steve Cohen had to bring it up over and over and over again, yes, for that particular concept for the education for that. So I understand that. But I think one thing that we may be missing in the video that was shared with us is, if you're going to be calling from people from certain areas, then are they coming trained with the concept of what I just saw? Are you going to bring in people with that type of mentality? How do you stop that? I mean, we got an example of what it may look like from that part of the country. So are those the type of people we will be hiring?
Councilwoman, Chief, can you sort of explain how people like that possibly would be screened out in your hiring process?
You wouldn't know.
Well, one thing about background investigations is that you have to have people that are willing and trained to do deep background investigations and get information from that particular jurisdiction. Sometimes jurisdictions won't give you information about an individual that may have had, some type of serious complaint filed against them, but it's also revealed in other ways too. We're able to find out, whether or not that person was able to leave in good standing. Sometimes it said left under pressure or something of that nature. You may not get the details, but you'll be able to figure out that something evidently went awry. But it's important that the leaders of the organization, not just me, but the command staff here as well, that we have checks and balances in place, that we have various audits on our employees, that we do integrity checks, and really try to weed out people who don't deserve to wear a badge. I'm not talking about people who are coming in from the outside. I'm talking about people who are right here. And that's a process that we will continue to work on, too, so that we can weed out individuals in the department. It's important for us to have a department of integrity.
Thank you, Chief. I would like to just charge all of us on this council to think about, as we bring this back, it's going to come back 3 times or whatever, 3 times before we vote on it. if we could think of things and that we see as weaknesses in this ordinance. Let's ask our attorney, if you've got ideas, take it to Attorney Wade and ask him to try to help make this ordinance one that we can all back and feel safe, and that way we can get an extra pool of applicants, hopefully, for our police department, because we need to move it up. With that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to call for a vote tonight to move this forward, and it'll go to our next meeting, and I'll bring it back in committee for us to have extra comments then.
Are we not doing any more comments, Chair?
Ma'am?
Are we not doing any more comments, Chair?
Oh, we can do it. Yeah, did you raise your hand? You want to talk? I didn't see one
I was
else.
about to. I was waiting.
Okay, so Easter Thomas, and then Robinson, and anybody else?
Everybody. Yeah.
Yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Chair. I hate we missing somebody. I had some questions, but I guess I'll pose this to the makers of the new referendum that's being brought back. I know that earlier we had a presentation from HR about their issues, and then there are also advances toward hiring practices for MPD recruits. And one main question that I have, so we all know and we cannot deny that our retention and attrition problems, none of these articles say there has just been an attrition and retention problem in Memphis. None of them say we are the only one. None of them say every other police precinct and department is growing in astronomical numbers except Memphis, because it's Memphis. So nothing that we've seen data-wise shows us that we're in this fight alone. So with this referendum that's asking for individuals to live up to 50 miles outside of the city of Memphis, I would like information and statistics comparing the retention and attrition to all of those departments 50 miles outside of the city of Memphis. Because who's to say that those individuals in those departments are not having the same issue? Because if you're not working, if you would like to become a police officer, public safety officer, and you're not working where you are, we need to know why. And if they're also having a retention and attrition issue, who's to say they're coming here? And if they do want to come here, who's to say why they can't live here? And so my main thing is, one, I would like those stats if this is brought back, since we're talking about basing this in evidence and not bad faith arguments. I would like to see those statistics and then be able to compare those to really see a broad or a more concrete view on what this really means in accordance with folks who are 50 miles outside of the city of Memphis. Also, taking it back to a point that we talked about when we first had this referendum last year as a discussion, I'm still not seeing what the big urge is to not recruit people to live in a city that we say we all love and support. I don't understand why it's so allowable for everyone to be able to throw up their hands and accept whatever, wherever, and not even ask them the simple request of live amongst us. You don't even have to live in the city. The county is a big place. You have multiple options if you don't want to stay in the city of Memphis. You have Bartlett, Arlington, wherever. However, with those options, none of those should be stay 50 miles out, stay 75 miles out, stay where you want to, come in here, get our tax money, and then go do what you please. And Councilman Morgan, you said this has no cost. Everything has a cost. Whether it be now or later, there still is the point of us using our tax money to build other places, a possibility, as well as the detrimental cost of us allowing individuals not to see the worth and the value of the place that they're supposed to protect every day. If you don't see a good opportunity in living in a place where you're working, why are you here? Is my main question. Also, to the point of if we don't do anything, the General Assembly, if the state is going to make their own legislation, we ain't the General Assembly. They can do what they want to do. So if they're going to do that, let them do it. They don't have anything to do with us. We make our decisions. We argue all the time about preemption and what the state is doing. There is no guarantee that if we do not make a decision allowing this referendum to go, that the General Assembly will not do anything on this. So since that is not in writing, I don't trust that they're either going to do it or not going to do it. Whatever they're going to do, let the chips fall where they may, it all come out in the wash. But to that point, they can make their own legislation. We make ours. But as far as my going on this, I would like to see more stats on 50 miles outside of the city of Memphis for retention and attrition rates. Since this is not a Memphis problem, it's a national problem. And once again, I said earlier, MPD has shown us earlier, they did a great job. They've been doing a great job with recruitment and increasing their strategies and just widening and broadening the pool for things that we have not heard before 2020 about how they're going into these universities, the different programs, virtual recruitment, and that is wonderful. But I still cannot wrap my mind around allowing individuals to be able to say they want to live where they want to and they care about us here. Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to suggest that as we move forward, look to bring an amendment about if we pass hiring people from 50 miles, we would like to see them move into the county within X amount of time. Okay, well, what I was trying to do is come up with something along that line. Never mind. Thank you, Councilman Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had hoped our council members wouldn't get really emotional. This is just to me, a procedural opportunity for us to talk about new possibilities for our city and our community. I understand what it's like to be Black in Memphis, Tennessee. I have a son, I have daughters, and I have me. I know what it's like to be pulled over by a police officer and my friend is driving and he argues the point about he wasn't speeding and I'm right there and they wouldn't listen. They took him to jail. And he was one of the most brilliant minds in the United States and is now working in Washington, D.C. and New York for several different legislators or congressmen and has just done a phenomenal job. This is all about how people treat people. And we hope that we hire the best people. We can do the best that we can, I think, as a police department to weed out the people that shouldn't be there. But I do believe that even in our training and our annual training, we need to spend a little more time, the psychology of how people respond to people, how the law is applied in all areas. And you can't do it a one shot and 10 years later hope those officers remember that. The sociology behind what happens in people's minds when they're in those moments. And the thing that the police department, I think, does well with us and the community, but I don't know how they do it with each other, doing those scenarios to discuss that. I am willing to talk about this on a temporary basis so that we can get our ranks back up. But I don't want it to be a permanent situation. I was talking to one of the members of the police department and they said, well, what is wrong with someone coming across the bridge from West Memphis? When our police officers go over there,
when people go to South Haven, Mississippi, which is right next door to me, and work and come back to Memphis and back and forth, this is a metropolitan area. We may need to think about that in the future or how we look at it. But the bottom line is, I think that everybody is saying, is basically, we want people who want to work, will be proud of the work that they do here. They have the Constitution that they want to treat all people right and not some people. And that we monitor that and provide the support that they need to make that happen. If we continue in this conversation moving forward, we need to make sure we consider all of those areas. The people who live in West Memphis, Arkansas, after they work here 6 months, may decide this is the place that I want to live. If they don't, then maybe we need to make a different decision. But we can look at what we have here on the table and we can fashion it where it will support the citizens of Memphis in the way we'd like to see them protected and treated. And we can also position this so that our officers would get all of the proper training, sensitivity training, sociology training, and legal training so that they can be remanded and even in scenarios where they're actually doing like the live shooter thing, that treating people, is how you treat people is really important. And I think that's what the council members are saying. Some council members believe that more officers will reduce crime. No, we have a problem in our own communities, council members. Y'all know that. Some things other people can't solve for us. That's something that we're going to have to do and work with our communities and say to them that you matter. We all matter. And we've got to do this together. And we don't have to fight to do it. We can just create actions that bring people together and they understand how to treat one another. I will be voting to move this item along the process, but I do have the right to change my mind in the next 3 readings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I'd like to point out that my goal as we move forward as chairman for the next meeting is that what we do is we think about the comments that Councilwoman Robinson just made about what do we do to bring this forward. And the amendment I heard from Councilwoman Robinson was, I want a sunset clause on this once we get a certain spot. Okay, I want other amendments from Councilman Jones that he can bring in that would make the sensitivity training and the screening of people that we bring in from outside more likely to be safe and better. I'd like to have us think about this and beat this thing to where we can actually expand our pool for a period of time that brings people that we want, and we get our police department the ability in a very tight labor market to have a larger pool from which to draw from. And with that, Councilman Jones.
I'd like to speak.
Okay, Councilman Colvette, and then Councilman Jones, and we'll close it up.
I thought we were speaking once. Yeah, because then it's going to go back and forth all night long.
Well,
we all made our.
Jones, would you mind if you just spoke at our next time?
Yeah, because guys,
Councilman Ford, you'll get to go next afterwards since you haven't spoken.
Colleagues, there is no doubt that we are all quite passionate about this issue. Okay, there's no question of that. There's no question of that. We've addressed this question already, 2-3 times now? The good thing I'm hearing, though, is that I'm starting to sense there's a conversation brewing that we do what we've talked about doing in this opportunity, which is let's find the ground we agree on, not what we disagree on. We agree on we need more police. We need more enhanced training. There are other things in our communities we have to work on that do not include the police. But going forward, what I'm signaling to you guys, if you have an amendment, bring it. If you have an idea of how to tackle this problem, bring it. Because the question the answer that we come up with together still has to go in front of the people for a vote. Let's not forget the main push here. This is about public safety and about letting the people decide this question. And I, for one, would like the people
Wrap us up, please.
Yes, I know we're talking about the police right now, okay? But what you're looking at here also, it's not only the police, it's fire department. And we need to look at the whole picture, not part of the picture. I know the police is very, very important, okay? Fire department got a few issues, not like the police department. But if we bring this up, we got to put both together. So I want everybody to know it's not only the police department, but it would be pertaining to the fire department also. Okay? Yep. So we got to think about all of those different things, not just one part. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to now take a roll call vote to move this item to the full agenda for the 21st. Ms. Crichton, could you please call a roll call vote?
Councilman Canale, Councilman Carlisle, Councilman Colvette, Councilwoman Easter Thomas,
No.
Councilman Ford, Councilwoman Johnson, Councilman Jones,
No.
Councilwoman Logan,
Abstain.
Councilman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilwoman Robinson,
Yes.
Councilman Smiley, Councilwoman Swearingen,
No.
and Chair Warren.
Abstain. And so, with that, this will move forward.
What's the count?
3 to 4.
3 to 4.
So they failed.
But it's going to move forward with a negative recommendation. And thank you very much. I'll call this meeting now adjourned. Appreciate you guys.